Are you ready for Season 3 of Discography? We're jumping into the deep end of The Who. Not only will we go through every Studio Who album in great detail, but their story is often told between albums, so we'll be touching on non-album singles, the solo works of Keith Moon, John Entwistle, Roger Daltrey, and Pete Townsend, and some of the events that would make a record begin as a concept and land as something that would universally change the world. Discography returns to Consequence Podcast Network in January of 2019. Until then, be lucky.
Consequence Podcast Network.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of
Greetings, dirty birdies, and welcome yet again to The Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast from the Consequence Podcast Network. We hope you're doped up and cozy in bed because we are here to talk about Stephen King's 1987 novel, Misery. My name is Rockin' Randall Colburn, and you might know me from previous episodes of this podcast, as well as my work on consequenceofsound.net and the AV Club. Welcome. It's the new year. It is the new year, and this is our first episode of the new year. We're ringing it in with, I'd say, one of Stephen King's most popular books.
I would say so, too.
That's some good timing, I think.
But you know what? Last year we rang in 18 with one of his most popular books, too.
Which one?
Yeah.
Christine. You remember that? Vroom, vroom.
I really do. Vroom, vroom.
Vroom, vroom.
Zoom, zoom.
But this is 2019, which is very exciting because that's the year of King.
Yes, it is.
19.
He's been working his entire career up to this year.
It's also the year of the pig, which is relevant.
Piggy,
oh,
piggy.
wow. Yeah, Misery.
Wait, are we talking about Dan Caffrey?
No, Piggy.
No!
Sorry.
Our Lord and Savior, Dan Caffrey, who watches above us in the studio.
So welcome. We're excited to be here. A few housekeeping things before we get started and introduce a special person who is returned to us from the wilds of the Midwest, and then a new guest that we are happy to have on, and then of course us old farts who you know and love. But yeah, so first we just want to give you an update on our back catalog, because a lot of you have been asking, hey, where's our back catalog?
Hey, where are the episodes?
Where are the episodes?
Look, I woke up this morning and those episodes just aren't there anymore.
Yeah, that we get that a lot. And so we would just like to say that we're sorry, but we are in the process of remastering all those old episodes. Some of them, the early ones, were recorded in Mac's dimly lit apartment in the winter of 2017 when we had one mic. So it was a different time, and we're trying to make the episodes sound better and also just kind of updating some of the sounds and things of that nature, and trying to level out some of the audio. Things like that. We just want to make it sound better for you.
And we're going to roll them out like how Disney does with the vault.
Exactly. We're rolling them out.
Coming out from the vault.
We're doing it from the vault. So we've already rolled out.
For you.
Yeah.
We've already rolled out our Skeleton Crew episodes, our Pet Cemetery episodes.
No, not the yet. Well, they will be
Oh, I
out
thought
soon.
Pet Cemetery was out.
No, I had to hold those back a little bit, but
Oops.
they will be out.
They're very long.
That is
Yes,
the
they are
next
very
book
long.
that we're going to be rolling out.
Cool.
So that's
Well,
gonna be fun.
yeah, there are several that are back there, but also I think, but we do have everything like through the summer that is
Yes,
available.
all of our Castle Rock coverage is out there. So if you haven't watched Hulu's Castle Rock,
It's a good time to
do
do
it,
it.
and then listen to all those episodes.
Well, you've got
where we
our
talk
Drawing
about
of the
it.
Three episode.
We have the Gunslinger.
Gunslinger.
We got Christine.
Christine is out.
We also have all our It coverage.
All of our It
all
coverage.
8
which,
episode.
Which was, we didn't do 8.
We did 8.
We did
Oh,
8?
man.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even realize that.
One for each loser plus Pennywise.
Jesus Christ. What's wrong with
And
us?
Pennywise is technically part of the Losers Club.
Yeah.
No,
I agree.
maybe.
Or Nickel's
So
stupid. Definitely a loser.
So
Yes.
yeah, just be patient. We're gonna keep rolling them out, and hopefully we'll have them out soon. It's a lot of work though, because hey, guess what? We talk a lot.
We do talk a lot, and you like that, and that's why we created a real trap for ourselves when we released that 3.5-hour episode of Carrie 2 years ago.
But we just want to make sure every episode is the same general quality.
General
right?
quality.
It's going to be a good thing.
It's true.
I think so.
And then also, just want to take a moment to hop in right now and say, guess what? We still need iTunes reviews. We need them from you, but good ones, not bad ones.
Yeah, if we get any bad ones, let's just say Annie Wilkes is out there.
Yeah, Annie Wilkes is out there, and guess what? Annie Wilkes liked it when we talked about the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones for 5 minutes.
She did.
So
she just went nuts and went to her laughing.
She gave
place.
us a 5-star review, so maybe you guys should also do the same. So head to iTunes, head to Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts, give us a positive review. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. As I always like to say, we post fresh content on each platform.
We love fresh content.
I love fresh content.
Eat fresh.
Yeah, eat fresh, and it's different on each platform. We don't just post the same garbage.
We don't.
Oh, it's curated and customized.
It's curated and
for your
customized,
pleasure.
and we engage in the comments.
We have great memes, funny memes.
Great memes.
Goodreads too.
What was that?
And Goodreads, yes.
Goodreads?
That's
Goodreads.
Justin Gerber's.
Justo's good about that.
Yeah, he loves Justo. Just loves that Goodreads.
I'm not good on Goodreads because guess what? Reading is for nerds.
When I hear the word Goodreads, I always think of Good Guys from Child's Play.
Wait, good guy? Oh, like what? The Good Guy doll?
Yeah, like I see the font. I say Goodreads, but it's not like kind of like childish font. Of
Are you
Good
excited
Guys.
for the Child's Play reboot?
Oh, I love Brian Tyree Henry, but let's just say I don't need a remake of a seminal classic.
This is still housekeeping.
But you know that Don Mancini's also doing like another sequel.
Oh yeah, because he's continued this insane storyline,
and he's really pissed off that they're doing a reboot.
I know he's bummed out that people don't want to sit through 4.
Look, if there's no Jennifer Tilly, I'm not interested.
That is true. I love Jennifer Tilly, and I love her sister Meg Tilly. Big Chill, great movie.
Oh yeah, I forgot she's in that. Okay, so anyways, that's our housekeeping. Again, my name is Randall Colburn. I am one of the hosts of this illustrious podcast that you have continued listening to. This is like our 2-year anniversary.
2-year anniversary.
That's
2
really
years ago,
exciting.
we were sitting around in Mac's apartment, and I was very cold because it was a
chilly.
cold winter that year.
It was a cold winter, cold snap.
Cold
and
snap.
Hey, it's cold in this book too.
It is. Lots of snow.
Yeah, luckily, I'm not going to go there.
Lots of snow made with lots of snow, if you know what I mean.
I agree. So who's sitting across from me, and how the hell are you?
This is Michael Misery's return, Rothman.
You had a little bit there.
I did. It was a fun little bit, and I had a lot of fun doing it. I'm editor in chief and president of Consequence of Sound, and also a constant contributor to this podcast. And in addition to Halloweenies, Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger podcast.
That's right.
This year we're heading to Elm Street, and it's been a long, big move from Haddonfield to Springwood, Ohio.
So people will be able to access those episodes via the same feed.
Yes, the same feed. You don't even have to do anything. You just sit there and wait for it to change over.
Is it still, if they want to find the podcast, do they still search Halloweenies?
Yes, you could find it through Halloweenies.
That's the nice thing is like,
and you could find it through Freddy Krueger.
yeah, but the nice thing is Halloweenies doesn't just need to be about Halloween. It can be about anything spooky.
It is, and it can.
So it ended up being kind of a good podcast name.
It was a good, fun podcast given by my ex-wife. So
all right,
it was
let's
fun.
move on.
It's just a fact. It's just a fact.
It's just a fact. It's just a fact.
How was your 2018?
My 2018 was, I guess I could say, tumultuous.
Yeah, that's all you're going to give me?
That's all I'm going to give you. But
okay, that's okay. And how did you first encounter Misery?
My first encounter with the book was through Rob Reiner's film. Actually, this is my first time reading it. I just never got to reading this novel,
When did
even
you
though
see
I've
the movie?
seen the movie 1,000 times. I saw it as a kid. I honestly was trying to think if I saw it in theaters or if I saw it like maybe like the first weekend it came out on like VHS. I just have vivid memories watching it as a kid because I do feel that like I'm from South Florida, so seeing like this like wintry tale on screen was so alien to me. Like I even just like being bedridden when you have the flu in South Florida, you still go outside, you still do all these things. Like so it was just such a surreal sort of story for me as a kid, and I have like really, really vivid memories of watching this film at that time. Plus, I love Rob Reiner. So
do you really?
I love Rob Reiner and I love James Caan, so I can't wait to talk about this movie. So
You don't love Kathy Bates?
I do love Kathy Bates, but Kathy Bates terrifies me in this movie. So.
She's very scary,
and it's crossed over into other movies because of it. So
Wow.
yeah.
Who's sitting next to you, and where the hell have you come from to be here today?
This is Mel Cockadoodie Castle.
Yes.
And I came from Iowa City, where I currently live, but this is my home base, really. I lived in Chicago for more than 20 years, so it's lovely to be back.
We're so happy to have you here.
No, I'm so happy to be
This is the
back
first
in the
time,
studio.
Yeah, this is the first time you've been back in the studio since what was your
August
last
or
episode?
yeah, it would have been in the summer.
It was an It episode, wasn't it?
Oh, well, I've been on episodes remotely.
Yeah, remotely, but your last in person was
I think it was The Mist, wasn't it?
My last
Oh no, maybe it was
in-person
no. You know what?
episode.
I know what it was. It was Skeleton Crew Part 2 because we had just edited that episode and we have some like Losers Club clip from it that when we sent you off and all.
Yeah.
Well, we're happy to have you here. How was your 2018? How was school?
2018 was crazy. I mean, it was a time of transformations, a time of new beginnings. I moved. I got into grad school. I'm getting my MFA at the Iowa Writers Workshop, which, as a fan of Stephen King, did not think that would ever happen. But so that's cool. It's been so nice to move somewhere where the pace is a little slower. The town is much smaller. I'm really leaning into it. Yeah. Not as much as our poor protagonist does in this book. And I have to say that I'm probably being less productive writing-wise. So, maybe I just need a good hoblin. But
Hoblin.
With
no G.
It was a good year. And everything kind of started up, and I did one semester, and now it's kind of like, what is this whole experience going to be like in toto? So...
Hey,
it was
Toto,
very exciting.
I always associate that phrase with Harold Lauder in The Stand.
I always associate that phrase with Africa, which plays a
bless
big
the
part.
rains.
Oh, you mean
Down in
Weezer's Africa?
Weezer's Africa, great song.
Mel just like rolled her eyes because we started doing a bit.
I did? I didn't even know I was doing it. It's so instinctual at this point. Also, by the way, this is the first time I've been back, as we've mentioned, and the studio looks incredible.
Yeah, there's been a lot of...
These guys have really remodeled and just given the place a really homey feel. There's a great spider gremlin on the wall. There's posters everywhere.
From you.
There's Christmas and Halloween lights.
The spider gremlin is yours, so you should
It's
say
yours
hi
now.
to it.
Hi, spider gremlin.
Yeah.
You mean a
it's very cozy, unlike the room that Paul Sheldon sits in Misery, which feels very claustrophobic.
I would
So,
say so.
Mel, when did you first encounter Misery?
I'm pretty sure that my first introduction to Misery was like a VH1 list of most brutal moments in horror films, where they show the scene, which is different in the book, where Annie Wilkes does some very bad things to Paul Sheldon's legs.
Yeah.
And from then on, I was very interested in this story. I don't think I saw the film until after I read the book, though. I pursued the book first because I was already into Stephen King at that point. And then I definitely also remember seeing the still photo of like her looking down. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So I have a pastiche of images associated with this. But again, it was the book first, then the movie. I like both of them very much.
And is this your second read?
This is probably my third read.
Whoa.
Nice.
Yeah.
That beats me. And so we have a brand new loser we're here to introduce today that we're very excited to have on. She is a friend. She's a filmmaker. She is a writer.
She used to be my boss.
She used to be
I
Mel's
forgot
boss.
about that.
And she is sitting to my left, and your name is?
Lara Unnerstall. It's a long last name. It's German. I hate it. I'm sorry.
I disagree. I think it's a great last name. And
I would almost
Thank
say
you.
Laura Funnerstall.
Yes, that is how I often go. I try to put the fun back into Unnerstall. That's pretty much my goal.
Tell us a little bit about your relationship to horror and specifically Stephen King.
Yeah, so I'm a huge horror fan. I am a filmmaker. I'm trying to make horror films now. I've completed one horror short. In my past, I did more kind of like wacky comedy trash films. But I am obsessed with horror movies, and Stephen King has been sort of a spectral presence in my life for as long as I can remember. My mom read him, and so those paperbacks were always around the house. I think the first one I read was it when I was way too young to read it and comprehended like 0.001% of it.
That's a running theme on this podcast.
Yeah.
We all read it a little too early.
Yeah, and I don't know. It did something to me. I don't know what. But it was the one with Tim Curry on the cover. It was like the miniseries tie-in paperback. And I had a huge crush on Tim Curry at the time, for reasons I don't completely understand because I was
Rocky
about
Horror.
6 or 7. Yeah, I don't know.
It's a confusing time in a
was-
child's life.
Yeah, it was like foreshadowing. So yeah, that was, and I watched the miniseries repeatedly, and then the Stand miniseries
Yes.
came
Oh,
out,
yeah.
and I think I also read the Stand when I was way too young to read it. I think it was more like, wow, these books are really big. I'm really going to do this to myself. Because as you know, I was a very popular child, if this is any indication of how that went for me. Yeah, and I got really into it. It did spark. It was one of the things, along with like Pee Wee Herman and Beetlejuice, which sort of indicated my future tastes.
What is your relationship to Misery?
So this was my first time reading the novel. I definitely saw the movie, probably again when I was too young. I don't really know what was going on there with that theme. But my grandma looked almost exactly like Kathy Bates. So I loved Kathy Bates. To me, she was like, my grandma's on TV. What a sweet, fun thing to have. And I don't totally remember the first time I saw it. I think I saw like a TV edit of it, and I was terrified. I'm extremely claustrophobic. It was definitely, I know I was too young to see it, and it scared the hell out of me. Everything about it. So I've seen the movie a handful of times in my adulthood as well. This was my first time reading the book, though, and not surprisingly, it made me extremely claustrophobic because I am extremely claustrophobic.
Same.
When was the last time you watched the movie?
It was years ago,
Yeah.
though. I thought about rewatching it like this week in preparation for the podcast, but I thought, no, I'm going to get through the entire book, and then I'm going to have a sit down and do my nerdy side by side and think. I am very curious to rewatch it because the book is so much about books that seeing it as a movie is intriguing.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, actually. And what's also interesting is like, I think it's, if I can recall, because I haven't seen it in a few years either, and I recall it being pretty faithful, but I honestly, while reading this, had no idea where the ending was going to go.
Yeah.
Which even just basing it on the movie, like I remember what the final shots are of the movie and everything, but I didn't realize like how he was going to get out of the house.
Right.
And I thought that was kind of interesting too, because it was just, there's something about the way, I guess, like the way that this, I feel like this book is presented as like it would be hard to actually adapt certain parts of this to the actual screen.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
I'm interested to go back and rewatch this now.
Here's a weird story. I thought I'd seen the movie until like this past week. And then when I kind of, I was reading the book again, I'd read the book before, I just started like thinking about the film, and I was reading some stuff about the film, and I realized I'd never seen it. I'd
Really?
only seen, like when Mel mentioned the VH1 lists, like I'd seen the key scenes as they replayed on shows and stuff. And I knew all the iconic images and the trailer images like of Kathy Bates and everything in the movie, but it just somehow slipped out and I never read it, I never watched it. So it's totally random for me. Like I just don't remember anything about it except for the scenes that I saw, which helped me realize I'm like, oh my God, I've never seen it. I always thought I had.
Well, that's interesting though, because I do feel that like that also applies with The Shining for a lot of people. Like people who have never seen that film could tell you pretty much beat for beat what happens, mostly because some of the most iconic scenes in that movie happen to just be the biggest narrative beats in that film.
Yeah.
And I do wonder, like now, if Misery is that case for most people, because I mean they've used it so much in pop culture, even down to like parodies, like that people have done.
The parodies too, I think, are part of it. Like I'd seen so many parodies, and the story is so easy to grasp. You know, it's such an elevator pitch kind of book where it's this kind of like obsessive fan kidnaps this guy, breaks his legs, and kind of holds him hostage to write something for her. And that to me, I guess, is like, you know, it's not like there's an intricate. Like, there's a lot of intricacy to the book, but the plot itself is fairly straightforward. And so I guess I always thought that because of that, I had seen the movie. So I'm actually excited to rewatch it in advance of next week's episode, where we're going to talk about the movie and the stage adaptations. Because there's been 2 separate stage adaptations of this play.
So intriguing. I wish I had seen any of them.
One of which Bruce Willis
Yeah.
starred in.
Oh, wow.
With Laurie Metcalf.
Yes.
What?
Yeah,
Sorry,
it was
I'm
like
still. I guess I could see it, but I mean, I don't know. Yep.
I love the idea of Bruce Willis.
I'm currently writing a musical for Misery, actually.
A musical?
Oh yeah,
Somebody actually
Nice.
wrote like an opera of it, like in Germany or something.
I could see that working.
Maybe it was one of
opera,
your
actually.
ancestors.
Yeah. Let's not. Okay. Well.
So anyways, but I first read this. I just remember a lot of Stephen King books for me like happened in a very like trim period of time where I just became really obsessed with him, and I would go to the library, check out whichever one looked intriguing that I hadn't read yet. So I read like, you know, man, just I'd say like a lot of his mid 80s to early 90s work I like read, like Tommyknockers, Rose Madder, Gerald's Game, this, you know, I read all of them in this kind of furious burst, maybe over like 6 months, because I just kept checking them out, going home, reading them like in my room at night. And so
Paul Sheldon.
Yeah. Wait, no.
In your room alone at night. Okay, whatever.
You're stretching it.
Stretching a little bit.
But I'll say that Misery I remember reading, and I really liked it, although I was really young. I was probably like 14, 13. And I remember hating the Misery sections, where it's like actually that book. And I was like, why are we getting so much of this?
I definitely forgot how much is in there.
Well, King loves to do that. I mean, if you think about Stand By Me, it's like all the sections from Gordy's book, about the Latino couple or whatever. Like, I'm just it's like
it goes
there's
on
so
forever.
much of it in that book, and
it's like, well, we're gonna prove that this protagonist is a writer by showing you one of his short
Well,
stories.
I always feel like these are maybe
don't believe me.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, in those instances, like in the Dark Half too, you see a lot of sections from the different novels that the two personalities write.
I can't wait.
It's good. But the thing is, like, there I remember digging it because it was more like pulpy crime stuff, and I felt like they were kind of like aborted stories that King had been working on, and he just kind of took the scraps and used them, in this. And I was wondering, and I felt like he did that with Stand By Me as well, but I wonder because I can't imagine King writing this kind of book, or, like even starting it and abandoning it and using the scraps in this book, like just the Misery. I feel like that this was more him challenging himself to write like a Victorian romance novel or whatever. So
yeah,
it's but I have a lot of thoughts on those sections. We'll talk about them later, because this time I didn't skim through them like I did when I was a kid.
Oh, that's good.
So so I'm excited. Why don't we all go around and say which edition of Misery we read? I'll start because I'm lame and I read the Kindle edition, because what can I say? Daddy loves his devices.
Oh, you've gone to digital, huh?
Oh yeah, I'm a
That's
digital
good.
boy. I'm a future boy. So
Intel inside.
Noted future boy.
Noted future
Randall
boy.
Colburn.
So I'm going to read the synopsis that is on Amazon.com, where I bought this book. Paul Sheldon is a best-selling novelist who has finally met his #1 fan. Her name is Annie Wilkes, and she is more than a rabid reader. She is Paul's nurse, tending his shattered body after an automobile accident. But she is also furious that the author has killed off her favorite character in his latest book. Annie becomes his captor, keeping him prisoner in her isolated house. Annie wants Paul to write a book that brings Misery back to life, just for her. She has a lot of ways to spur him on. One is a needle, another is an axe. And if they don't work, she can get really nasty.
That's great.
So nasty. Miss Wilkes, if you're nasty.
I will say, Laura, the Kindle edition I have, I believe, is the same as yours, so your synopsis might actually be very similar.
Yes, it's the first Scribner trade paperback edition, January 2016. It has a blue cover with vivid red font for the title and an ominous cabin, a little subtler than the lurid original paperback cover with the silhouette of Annie and the axe in the bedroom. So it leaves a little more to the imagination.
I like that cover a lot.
I actually really like it.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
It reminds me of I think the movie cover is very, very similar to
Those
that,
editions
for sure.
look good. I like the thick marker font.
Yeah.
I think the first one I read was the original hardcover that had didn't have the bed and the axe in it, and it was in Misery was written in red. I just remember it being like a very brown, woody.
It shows the room.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
'cause that's what we've. I have the first edition at home, and I don't like to leave. I don't like to travel around with them because I did that 2 years ago, and I ruined like 3 books doing that. But. Yeah, like that's what Sam's been reading. Like she's and I see the cover every time, and then I look at mine. And I'm like, eh.
For a pocketbook's cover, though, it's not the worst.
It's not the worst, but it's also just
tell us
very
about
like.
it, Mike.
You go for it.
Okay, so
because you have the same one.
We
you guys
both
have the
read the
same.
pocketbook Simon and Schuster edition, which came out I think in 2017. It's pretty much just a corner of the room. We've got the bed with a coverlet and then an axe leaning against the bed. It looks like a small room. I'm fine with the font, and
Kind of looks like an Airbnb.
it does. I mean, if it weren't for the axe,
yeah.
I would stay there.
Yeah, it's like it looks fine, like 3.5 stars. Yeah.
What's this axe? I always love that they always have in any of these rooms that are pretty much just pointless guest rooms. Everyone always feels the need to put like a chair.
Yeah,
you're not going to really sit in and that's what I kind of love about this cover too, is like that nondescript like wooden chair that's sitting there next to the bed. So like if you like actually walked in the room, you're like, where should I go? Should I sit on the bed or should I sit on this chair that looks really uncomfortable? I'm going to go for the chair. Like no, there's always I go home to my like grandmother's house or like my parents' house even, and there's always this one like area in the house I know that they've never sat in the entire time that
there's
they've
like
lived
that
here.
Onion headline that's like a weird chair in the corner doing or like being brought into service. this Thanksgiving or whatever.
And speaking of chairs and spooky stories, I remember one time when I threw a Halloween party at my house or my apartment a few years ago, and someone had just left one of my dining room chairs in the middle of the room and just kind of sat it there. And I remember I was like exhausted, so I was just sitting there working on the computer later that night. And I just see this chair in the middle of the room just sitting there, and I thought it was like one of the most chilling images for some reason. Yeah, right. Like I don't know why it was, but either way.
I just mean in comparison to some of the pocketbook covers are so bad. Like I was complaining about the one to Carrie the other day, which is just a skull hastily photoshopped onto a boutonniere and or a corsage.
That might be better than the actual first edition cover for Carrie, though. It is the first edition cover for Carrie clearly shows that the publisher and the world had no idea what Stephen King was going to do, because it's literally just a girl.
Yeah, that's the one I had as a kid that I read. Yeah, because my mom had it and it was really old and faded, and it was like where the color's like black and white, and then another color maybe, and then the girl's face. Yeah, I remember.
Laura, that's
that.
worth a lot of money now. You should do that.
I should. Well, I mean, because but it is in bad shape. I mean, I remember I was like dog-earing the pages at age like 10 or whatever it was that I was reading it, and yeah, it's not good. I ruined it. I ruined my fortune.
That I've done so much damage to like first edition paperbacks. I didn't even realize I had them until halfway, and I just like had marked it and like ripped things off, and I'm like, oh, there goes at least $80.
Do you want to read your synopsis? Our synopsis?
Yeah, I'll do. You go for it.
Okay. Best-selling novelist Paul Sheldon thinks he's finally free of Misery Chastain. In a controversial career move, he's just killed off the popular protagonist of his beloved romance series in favor of expanding his creative horizons. But such a change doesn't come without consequences. After a near-fatal car accident in rural Colorado leaves his body broken, Paul finds himself at the mercy of the terrifying rescuer who's nursing him back to health. His self-proclaimed #1 fan, Annie Wilkes. Annie is very upset over what Paul did to Misery and demands that he find a way to bring her back by writing a new novel, his best yet, and one that's all for her. After all, Paul has all the time in the world to do so as a prisoner in her isolated house. And Annie has some very persuasive and violent methods to get exactly what she wants.
King at his best, a winner, the New York Times. Unadulteratedly terrifying. What a fucking ridiculous descript. Unadulteratedly.
Yeah, don't make an
unadulteratedly
out of that word.
And then they go unadulteratedly terrifying. ... Frightening.
The Boston Globe thinks it's classic King, and I don't know if you know this. On the Globe, Boston's pretty close to King's Dominion, aka Maine. So maybe we should go with that.
Coincidence? I think
not. Well, that was fun. Let's talk about the history.
Yes. Don't you see? Don't you see how clear it all is? Not only can you see the future, I can change it. You can change it, exactly.
A rich history on display in this book, don't you agree?
Oh, I would say so.
A lot going on here because it's so clearly... I mean, we say this all the time about his books, like how clearly...
Self-insert.
Yeah, just like how personal they are. Like clearly there's a lot of himself that he puts into his books. But
I'm going to go out here on a limb and say this is King's most metaphorical book in his oeuvre or whatever the hell you say.
Yeah, like elaborate on metaphorical.
I'll go all into it, but like I feel like you can make so many allusions to certain narratives,
parts
and
in his
themes
life.
in his life.
Yeah,
and like
absolutely.
I just think there's so many metaphors visually and like literally in this book.
Despite him. He doesn't want to cop to it. Like, he'll be like, yes, okay, I was a writer, I was an addict, like, I get the connection. But a little bit of me is in every character.
I saw that quote.
Yeah.
He said, he's like, oh, people think Paul Sheldon is me, but there's a little bit of me in every book. And it's like, no, this is you, buddy.
Yeah,
like, I mean...
straight up you.
Yeah, so...
Totally.
Yeah, so I think that let's start with sort of the nuts and bolts, which is that the book sort of like the actual process of how this book came to him, which is I got some kind of a good thing here. It was in 1984, the summer of 1984. He was going to England, and he was on a plane, and he had a dream.
Is this from tour.com?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was
Well, Grady Hendrix, like those King Revisited pieces are always good to go and find some of the nitty-gritty of the history. So, but I've got some
he's
stuff.
got a name of the Overlook guy, Grady.
Yeah, he also is a very good novelist. But I would say that I got, we're going to go beyond that. But just as kind of a good intro here. He was on a flight to England, fell asleep, had a dream about a popular writer who fell into the clutches of a psychotic fan. And he wrote down these notes on a cocktail napkin when he woke up. She speaks earnestly, but never quite makes eye contact. A big woman and solid all through. She is an absence of hiatus, whatever that means. Remember, I had just woken up. I wasn't trying to be funny in a mean way when I named my pig Misery. No, sir. Please don't think that. No, I named her in the spirit of fan love, which is the purest love there is. You should be flattered. And, but then also, so there was that dream, but then also, I've also read that the inspiration for Misery was also a short story that he read by Evelyn Waugh called The Man Who Loved Dickens. And so, and that's about, it's a short story about a man in South America who's held prisoner by a chief who falls in love with the stories of Charles Dickens and makes the man read them to him. And then King said, I wondered what it would be like if Dickens himself was held captive. And then also, because that's
more, please.
And then there's also the story of Mel, Laura, you might be able to help me here. Scheherazade. Thank you. You're both smarter than me, so I was like, you'll be able to help.
I just kept thinking of Schadenfreude.
Yeah, because we're such dumbasses.
That's a good title, is Scheherazade's Schadenfreude.
Scheherazade. So basically that story, which, Mel, do you know the Scheherazade?
Yeah.
Do you want to share
Arabian
that with us?
Nights is the story of Scheherazade, I think, is married to an abusive, gross guy who's going to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
And a king or something, or a lord.
And she's forced into this relationship. But as long as she can keep telling him an enticing, exciting story every night, I think it is continuation. Like, it's always like he needs to know what happens next. She is granted her life. So it's just a story about stories, as is this.
That's how you get the 1001 Arabian Nights,
right? Because
there's that many stories. Because she goes, oh, and then it ends, and he's like, I'm going to kill you. And she goes, no, I've got another story. and then he goes, oh okay. And then it just repeats ad nauseum.
I like this vision of the
How does
story.
it end?
I don't know. I can't remember, because does it end? Is that not the point that we
It
do
does.
not know?
There's like some hook or twist ending that happens in that. I think it has to do with like she does some sort of I'm not going to go literally on it because I don't know for sure, but I do believe it ends with something similar in this, that she uses the ending to one of the stories to get
like
out
escape,
of this, or something like that.
So when he got to England, he was staying in a hotel, and
Brown's Hotel.
Is that what it was
That's
called?
what it's called, yeah.
Brown's Hotel.
Yeah, what a boring name for a hotel.
Like Poop's Hotel.
Yeah, exactly.
And so basically he was hit with inspiration, and the reception desk actually allowed him to go right at Rudyard Kipling's old desk, which they had there, the desk that I believe he died at.
Oh, wow.
Who initiated that conversation? Was he like, I need somewhere to write? And they were like, well, just so happens. Or was he like, I heard Rudyard Kipling's desk is here.
Yeah, I feel like it might have been like, he knew, like maybe they told him about it because they're like, oh, Stephen King's here. And then he's just like, hey, do you mind if I go right there? Because I just think he probably thought it would be cool. And then he wrote like 16 longhand pages. And he thought it was going to be a short story about where in the end, like he was going to write this guy was going to write this story for this woman. And then she would bind it in like the pig skin. But then
no, in his skin.
Well, no, but she told him the pig skin, and then it would end with his skin, which would be kind of a groan-worthy King short.
Yeah, Toby Hooper could make an adaptation for it instead of Rob Reiner.
so yeah, but then he said that Paul ended up being more industrious than he initially thought he would be, and it kind of turned into a novel. So, and also I think he grew to really love the Annie character, or at least he has always said that she's one of his favorite characters that he's written, which is interesting.
Well, it was originally going to be called the Annie Wilkes edition, which is kind of a cool name. But I don't think. Obviously, there's the minimalism of Misery in this is just perfect, and the double meaning for it is awesome too. So
yeah, and then he said, as sick with drugs and alcohol as I was much of the time, I had such fun with that one. He says in the book, and then in this piece, I can't remember what this is from. This might be from the Tor piece, and when he says he was sick, he means that a normal human would be dead. Reportedly sober for about 3 hours a day, King was guzzling beer and hoovering up cocaine at a staggering rate. And so, but then he kind of said that this book was about addiction.
But here's the thing, and this is my theory, and this is the one thing I want to hammer big time on this episode, is that I think this is him contending with like his own connections to the horror genre. Because if you look back on our previous episode that we did, Non-Dark Tower, one of the things I really hammered on in that episode was how when he published it, he was this self-deprecating author that was going into, interviews and just being like, well, I lost it. I don't have it anymore. And Clive Barker is better than me. And I'm done doing horror. And I think he became so disenfranchised with horror because, I mean, look at the 80s was literally just them going like Master of Horror, the horror guy, Spooky Steven.
Well, also that was in the midst of his movies were starting to get really shitty about
Yes, exactly. And I think that, there's even elements of it with, Bill Denbrough where he's, he talks about a lot of these themes with his own past colleagues, and he's there that's a sort of resentment of like, fuck you, I am a genre writer, who gives a shit about that.
Yeah, that was a bit of a defense of it.
Yeah, and I think that like when we talked about that in that episode, we talked about how like he did want to distance himself from horror, and I don't think it's any coincidence that literally Misery, Tommyknockers, Dark Half all feature writers. Like they all feature writers that are dealing with the certain demons of it. Obviously, Dark Half is dealing with the whole Bachman pseudonym thing, which we'll talk about when we get to that episode. But I think with Misery, I think the actual Misery's return or the Misery series itself is Paul Sheldon's relationship to his own Misery series is Stephen King's relationship to horror, and him basically having to contend with the idea that, well, am I just a writer because of horror? Can I actually leave horror and still be a writer and still move on? I mean, he obviously at this point when he goes into Misery, there's no, I mean, even when he started writing Misery, which was like 84, I think it was. He was already at that time like such a huge popular writer. So like even him contending with the fame and fortune of this movie, or I mean his own success, is clearly in this novel. But I do think it's deeper than that, and I do think that it absolutely has to do with the fact that he felt like he was going to be boxed in forever, and boxed into a genre, mind you, that is one of the more least respected genres at the time. Maybe not now.
Well, you know what book came out in 1984, the year he started Misery?
Go for it.
Eyes of the Dragon.
Yes.
And he received huge blowback because people were like, why are you writing this fantasy bullshit?
Yeah.
So, I think Mike, too, this book does some like really interesting craft shit with that tension.
Yes.
Yeah. I can't wait to get into that stuff.
Yeah.
But also, this was going to be a Bachman book.
Was it?
It was.
I didn't see
going
that.
to publish it under the Bachman name, but the pseudonym was revealed before the book came out, which is interesting. Like maybe he wasn't fully on his way. Because I guess, I don't know if you agree with this theory, but it turns out at the end, he sort of embraces his relationship to what he's known to write, or his persona as a horror writer, in this case as a writer of the Misery series. But to be under the Bachman name would be a sort of like hidden embracing, it would have been.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, and I think that it's all like a really good point, Mike, and it's definitely valid, because I think that he was really rebelling against the backlash he received for Eyes of the Dragon, but then also just the idea that he felt he was being pigeonholed. And there's bits with Paul, and we'll read them later because I'm sure you guys probably wrote it down too, where Paul is just like, why don't you take my real work, seriously, and not like this fluff that I write.
My real work about the car thief. It's like, I like fast cars.
But that's the thing, is
Fast
like
cars.
I think Fast Cars is pretty much like his, for lack of a better word, sneak preview of what he would be doing in the 90s. I mean, if you look at his output in the 90s, for the most part, they have some sort of like genre, like spiritual horror aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
But he's found a way to mutate it into different things. And I would argue that like one of the reasons why he might actually reach that sort of conclusion with this book is because this book is of that design also. It's not really a horror novel. It's a thriller. Like it's a suspense. Like there's nothing really supernatural per se about Annie. I mean, there's definitely like allusions to his like sordid style of like, grisly murderous storytelling here. But at the end of the day, it's a thriller, which is pretty much a departure, especially from his predecessor with It. Like, so I do think it was kind of like him trying to move forward, and it absolutely makes sense to be Bachman because, it is a total like sort of tough as nails thriller that he would be publishing at the time under Bachman.
I think for me, what makes this so interesting is that King is, and when King does write writers, he's very self-critical. He's always working a lot of himself in there, and he's doing so oftentimes in an unflattering way. Like obviously when he inserts, well, no spoilers, but when he sort of literally starts putting himself in books later in his career, he is very self-deprecating with the way that he portrays his character. He makes him very unlikable. And I think that it's that self-critical aspect that makes this book more interesting, because like you said, Mel, he does sort of in the end come to embrace that He is a genre writer in a lot of ways, but at the same time, this really kicked off an era in King's writing where, not like you mentioned, that he was writing about writers a lot, but he was also really toying with what he could do with genre, because not just Tommyknockers, which is a straight sci-fi, and then Gerald's Game, which is, you know, not horror, and something else like that's like
survivalist thriller.
Oh, there's some horror in there though.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, but I think that, you know, that's not the kind of book that he would have written earlier in his
And I want to talk a lot of, well, not a lot, but I do want to hammer. My hammer thing is that this is a precursor to Gerald's Game. This is Gerald's Game attempt number 1.
Yeah.
And it's the inferior novel. But
interesting.
I want to push back a little bit against what you just said, because I feel like when he talks about writers, especially with Bill Denrow, especially with Paul Sheldon, and even later when he himself is in the books, it feels to me more like a petulant ennobling of the profession. A very like, he can be self-deprecating and he can say these things and he can beat himself up, but it's always in service of like, but you know what? This is who I am, and it is part of me, and it's also a noble thing, and it's necessary, and people fucking love it, and you need to come to terms with the fact that we all love it.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, and I mean that he's doing that, and that is the entire point of the book in a lot of ways, where he says like there's several passages where he's like, nothing means anything except the misery pulsing through everything, and then he starts going into his musings on writing. Where am I going with this?
No, but
yes. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, no, but I think that's the thing that I feel like the subject of misery and what that means to Paul is that Paul's very confrontational with misery. Like, he hates it. And I don't even think that he loves it even at the end. I think he just feels it's his own, he feels that he identifies himself, like he almost personifies himself as the book series in itself. It becomes this existential sort of life raft for him, because he's like, am I Paul Sheldon without misery? And I feel like that's King saying that with horror. And I don't necessarily
and writing. King has always argued for the independence of the idea and also the writing motor.
Right.
He's always like, these are the little men, and it's not me.
Right.
It's like things working through me. And I've never had that relationship with writing, so I always bristle a little bit. I'm just like, oh, come on. I feel more like Annie Wilkes when she's like, you have control over the characters. Like, don't bullshit me, Buster. Like,
well, I think what's interesting in this, I see this as sort of a precursor in some ways, definitely to Gerald's Game, like especially in style and in like format,
content
and content. Well, yeah, content too, but sort of the, you know, I'd say the limited palette that he's working with here, and but I'd say that it's also in some ways a precursor to the Dark Half for me, because there's a bifurcated part here. There is, Paul here sees himself as that there are two Paul Sheldons. There is the Paul who writes trash, and there is the Paul who writes good work. And I think that is something King was reckoning with really hard at this time, because Dark Half is very similar, because it's about a guy, it's a pseudonym. It's like two different sides of his mind who write very different books. And I think that that's something that he was really working through at that time, is like, are these two, can they be, you know, independent of each other, or are they the same person? Am I the same writer?
He literally describes his own horror novels as like Big Mac and French fries to Time magazine around the time of the release of it.
Yeah. And I think
this is also the time, this book was literally published a year after Stand By Me, which they didn't even use the original title. They couched Stephen King's name in the credits. Like, that was considered this sort of very great coming of age story that was, praised for its writing, most of which probably people didn't even talk about Stephen King involved in that because he was horror. And I have to imagine, in the context of that situation, he had to have been sitting there in Maine, just, petting his corgi and just being like, God damn it. Like, and just fucking miserable about that.
Everything feels personal in this novel. Everything. Yeah. Tied to a bed, forced to, it's
there's
just
so much
reckoning
anger
with your public perception. And
Yeah, he even has, I have this noted for later for a certain section that I will not name, but he, compares writing to masturbation, basically. And then it sort of, with that line, which comes later in the book, it makes you start thinking of the whole book as this meta masturbatory exercise. And then I'm like, wait, oh no.
Well, I think there is that time when you start to feel that maybe when you get that famous, you feel as if your identity is being taken away from you because it's being defined by the fans now. And I think that
you're tied to a bed.
Yeah, you're tied to a bed.
The public perception of
I mean, he literally felt this in the 70s, like 2 or 3 books in, or less than that, because he published Rage under Richard Bachman. So clearly he was already like not like, you know, why am I going to be doing horror for the rest of my life? And I mean, I think that's
he was so desperate to put out not a horror novel that he pulled out the piece of shit that is Rage that he wrote in high school.
Well, here's the thing. Like, one of the things that kind of drives me nuts is that, like, see, he literally expressly states that, like, Misery is about cocaine. You know, he says that this is a book about cocaine. Annie Wilkes is cocaine. She was my number one fan. I think that's a cop-out. I really do, because when you're on cocaine, you're not going to be writing about you like being a cocaine user.
No, well,
like,
I mean,
like you're not. That's not like something that you're like actually while you're in the moment writing about, being like, oh, I got to get off of this stuff. Like when you're like, that's just not the thing. Like you're going to be looking and exploring more like deeper evils within you.
I don't know. I think that people who are addicts are constantly dealing with self-loathing about their addiction, at least from people that I've known.
He's sitting there snorting cocaine left and right writing this novel, and he's gonna be, why am I doing this? I don't buy it. No, because look, as someone who's done cocaine a lot in the past, I've never thought in my head about like
But you weren't an addict.
I'm not an addict per se, but I have been an addict about other things, and I guess in the sense that like, so when I was addicted to food and stuff. Like, I guess I was like sitting there at McDonald's being like, why am I doing this at the same time? But I do think that like there's a difference with cocaine. Like cocaine, you're so fucking worked up that you're not really thinking about like, there's not a lot of introspection in the sense of what you're actually doing in that moment. I feel like you're actually thinking about other things and going down different rabbit holes of other things.
But it can be both too, right? Because his relationship with cocaine was inextricable from his relationship with writing.
Yeah.
And I think you're right in that maybe it even just feels less embarrassing. I'm totally projecting here. To be like, it was about the cocaine rather than like, it's exactly what the text is saying. Like, it's so on the nose about like my relationship to my writing. Mm-hmm. But really, it's both. Like, I mean, you can't separate them. For him.
I mean, well, this is how he says it with Rolling Stone, because they go, "I can't believe you're ever a cokehead," and he goes, and he basically says like, well, I can't comprehend it now either. But you do what you have to do, and when you're an addict, you have to use. So you just try to balance things out as best as you can. But little by little, the family's life started to show cracks. I was usually pretty good about it. I was able to get up and make the kids breakfast and get them off to school. And I was strong. I had a lot of energy. I would have killed myself otherwise. But the books start to show it after a while. Misery is a book about cocaine. Annie Wilkes is cocaine. She was my number one fan. And that's what he says about the book. For me, I think it's lazy to say that this book is literally just about his cocaine addiction. Like, I think it's so much more.
Yeah,
than that.
it definitely. I mean, it obviously is. I think that's maybe the narrative he'd like to apply to it. Like, that's kind of what I think you're saying, right, Mel? That like in retrospect, it's just easier to say, oh, it's about this thing that I've already conquered. Where he's probably still grappling with a lot of the issues of like fan culture and like expectation.
And he sort of admits that repeatedly via Paul Sheldon, saying, you know, when he drinks from the bucket, he's like, I'm gonna maybe not tell anyone about this part. And then when he toward the end, like, is it okay to say things? Are we spoiler free? I don't know. I have spoiler free time. When he's thinking about how to tell this story after getting away from Annie, and his agent asks him to write a real narrative about a nonfiction narrative about what happened to him. And he said, even now I can see how I would, you know, plus up certain parts of it, puff up others, and change things. Like, you can't tell the truth. I mean, he's constantly talking, you know, and part of the addiction process is to sort of confabulate and tell narratives and stuff. So it's like, can he ever tell the truth about what this book is about? I don't know if he can. And that's sort of the point in a lot of ways. Yeah.
I will say too that to go to the bucket point, where I feel addiction most prominently in this book is those moments of rock bottom humiliation.
Yes, absolutely.
Not having control of how low you will stoop to get what you need.
And that's what I found the most frightening in many places. Same. I used little blue stickies to say wherever I was most frightened, and almost all of them are about him not having control over some really essential thing about himself.
Yeah, because he talks about how at one point, like, he's like, God, you know, I would love to smoke cigarettes, and he goes and relishes his past about or I guess some early on when he's just sitting there in the room and staring at the wall and all, he talks about how like, oh, well, I used to just be drinking and going from bar to bar. And that's probably why I wasn't as prolific in writing at the time. And that's because that's how he credits how much he's able to like just get through this misery book while he's just sitting there because he's got literally nothing to do except for write. And I feel like that's also sort of like King's almost way of just kind of yearning to wrestle to free of whatever demons he had. It's like, if I didn't have to deal with all the fucking clutter around me, whether that's addiction or my own self-defeating prophecies or whatever it is, or family, etc., I probably could just go flow through and I'll see the hole in the book like nonstop, or hole in the pages as he uses in the visual metaphor here. And I do feel like that there's that sort of pathos for me reading this towards Stephen King of just like, maybe he feels as if there are still hurdles in his life at this point that he could be a better writer, maybe it's these things that are actually distracting him, and you know, whether it's drugs or family or whatever it is. But that's another like sort of like weird metaphor I saw with him and Paul of just like, yes, Annie is this dominating thing of like the demand of his fans and his publishers and whatnot, and then you know his own vices he doesn't really have. And I almost feel like Paul's situation is eerily this sort of fantastical sort of like a fantasy almost for King, because it's like, oh wow, I could just sit here and just write without any sort of like, that was my own sole purpose. Like there's almost like this sort of like weird BDSM or what is it, the BDSM sort of quality to Paul's situation here in relation to King's sort of situation also. It's like, what if I could just fucking be forced to write and not have any of my vices? Like there's something weird about that.
In one of my notes, I wrote the word fandom and then I underlined dom. And I was like, I don't know. That's all I got here. Yeah.
That's a good point. And that actually helps segue into a big thing that I took away from this, which is, I think especially in a modern context, is I find this book very prescient in terms of toxic fandom, which I think is a huge fucking thing right now. Especially, I mean, you know, working at COS and AV Club, I know that if I'm writing about Star Wars or something and I, you know, get something wrong from what like the 5th Star Wars expanded universe book
with
from
your life
1983, then I've got 15 people on Twitter telling me I'm wrong, and then
then your opinion doesn't count either because of it.
Yeah, I know, and I don't even read comments anymore because I get called shit that is insane because I say like, you know, I don't know, Last Jedi was good. Like,
you have creators and actors leaving social media because they feel attacked and often in danger if they're getting doxxed.
Yeah, Kelly Tran left social media. Millie Bobby Brown left social media. Daisy Ridley, and then just like even Will Poulter from Black Mirror Bandersnatch, he just left.
Wait, really?
Yeah, because he said he was very chill about it, but he's just like, yeah, there's a lot of negativity on here. I'm not going to do this.
Wait, over Black Mirror?
Well, yeah, because people went fucking crazy hating on Bandersnatch, which I thought was pretty good. But I mean, it's not great, but
it often has to do with it rings to me. There was like this controversy with Steven Universe creators or people who worked on it earlier, like a year ago or something, when they wouldn't show a pairing that fans really wanted. They wanted two characters to get together, and it drove artists off Twitter because they were so mad that the show was not fulfilling their desires. And I was like, it's a tiny cadron of Annie Wilkes's. Like,
yeah, the most obvious example of something you've already mentioned was just the Star Wars thing. And honestly, it's not even just so much that it's awful with what the fans have done and with the way that they've kind of gone off on the different celebrities, because to a point, I feel bad, but at the same time, I'm just like, well, it's just social media. Just turn it off. Like, who cares? Like, they're idiots. The thing that drives me nuts is the fact that the slavish devotion to these vocal, you know, folks. Like, Disney listens to all of this and has feedback. Like, there's a reason why, like, they've been incredibly, you know, particular with how they're going to be doing this follow-up to Last Jedi. Like, there's a reason why after the reaction of Solo, they're like, maybe we should not be doing these like spin-offs now anymore. It's like, we got to go back to the drawing table and make sure that we go through all the different committee-based like filmmaking at this point and make sure that we can check off every box and we could appease more people. Like, this industry is so, and it applies to everything. It literally applies to our publication for sure. Because we sit there and we go, well, we don't really actually cover this in our scope, but our readers love this, and we have to make sure that we can stay afloat and go on board with that.
It's magnetized towards centrism. I mean, it feels very political.
Yes, I was going to say this is all exactly the same in politics. It's perception is reality now. We live in this world, and that's 100%. How things are.
You feed the entitlement of the entitled people, and therefore never opening an avenue for the creativity to blossom in a different direction.
Well, yeah, and I think for me, like, this is a topic I've gotten kind of passionate about over the last year or two. I think just because I've had to write about it so much, and I'm reading so many articles about fandom and how sort of, and you know, I just think back to Gamergate and how Gamergate was sort of the breeding ground for the alt-right. And that was a pop culture movement. It was a deeply misogynistic, problematic, horrible thing that in a lot of ways helped spawn the chat rooms and the Reddit threads that really turned into alt-right message boards. And there's so many reports these days about how gaming YouTube is becoming a portal to radicalized misogyny and transphobia and racism. And I'm terrified because my nephew, who is 10 years old, is obsessed with gaming YouTube, and then YouTube's algorithm, when you're watching these videos, starts to suggest, because like all these gamers are fucking, you got PewDiePie out there sharing Nazi memes and they won't do anything to him because he's the third most popular guy on the platform. And then, you know, you're watching him and then he says something and then you get their algorithm like shows you another video to watch that. And then it takes you down the rabbit hole. And like, this is a real thing. And I just see that the sort of slavish devotion to pop culture and the absolutism, the idea that you own this pop culture, it's a passion that lends itself to, you know, that weirdly serves as this sort of gateway into that kind of same absolutism about like human rights and gender identity and things like that. And it's weird. It's weirdly connected. And I know I sound a little tinfoil hat, but it's like,
I totally agree.
It's just something that I think about a lot. And, you know, I took a lot of notes here and I was just literally saying, I mean, this book is about a fan who asserts ownership over a piece of art.
Absolutely.
You know? And it's like, and like we look at Star Wars and like Ghostbusters, even, like, I mean, it's like the whole thing was just, how dare you put women in this world? And they can come up with a million different ways to couch that criticism. But it's like, and say, oh no, it's not about misogyny, but it totally is in the end. And that's why everybody's problem with Star Wars too. It's because there's like, oh, suddenly there's women and people of color in major roles. And it's like, and all these people suddenly have a problem with it.
And here's my thing about that is it's not always about that. And that's my problem with any of these debates, is that this is basically boiled down to the scene in Dawn of the Dead, where there's like two people arguing and the one guy's just in the corner just being like, we have to be logical. And he's the one that actually seems insane compared to everyone else that's like fucking throwing their heads off and stuff. My problem is that there's just no more room for nuanced discussion. Yeah. Like both sides of like you mentioned, like Ghostbusters and Star Wars, the vocal huge craziness sides, they're both wrong. Yeah. The people that are saying like, well, it's not about misogyny, and then the people that are saying no, it is about misogyny. Well, there's a gray middle there.
Sure.
That nobody gets a voice for, because nobody can just be bipartisan about things anymore. And again, it does go back to politics. It has to be black or white. And I feel like one of the reasons why I'm very interested to see what's going on with this new movement of, it's almost like people are kind of, and this is going to be a controversial position here, so whatever. But the only one thing that I will say that has been interesting about what's this sort of Trumpism sort of politics is that if those people that are in the middle, that have those that hit an exhibit in the gray area, if they could just be a little bit more forthcoming with their opinion and say, well, no, both sides are wrong. Let's actually try to discuss this and have a more cavalier attitude about it, which, for lack of better, if you want to call it like Trumpy in that way, then maybe there is a soluble sort of like outcome out of this, as opposed to just having to continue to coexist in this fucking messed up, chaotic world of you're either yes or you're either no.
Yeah.
There maybe is a maybe. It's the same thing with Rotten Tomatoes.
No, but I would argue, I mean, maybe this actually fits into what you were saying. I mean, the whole problem is that now this is a political podcast. One group is beholden to the idea of compromise.
Yeah.
And one group is not.
Exactly.
And therefore you don't get anything but compromising with the one group who's not open to compromise.
That's a good way to phrase it. And I think that, you know, I think that the people who are not compromising, they just want everything to be to their specifications.
Yes.
And that to me is what you really see in this book is Annie literally is dictating. I mean, the book, he ends up, flying down a creative rabbit hole with this, which I think says something interesting.
And to your point, Mike, I think it is like, it never is about one thing, right? If anything, it's about resistance to change or just like an attachment to a nostalgic idea.
Oh, totally.
And we see that from everything like Gamergate to just like George R.R. Martin. Poor George out there, like just trying to write his shit at the pace he wants to write it.
Right.
And everyone feels like they own not just the story, but the writer and the pace at which the story is produced.
Well, and can you even imagine the pressure he feels right now? The idea that like everybody has so many expectations, especially with the show. Like, what is he going to write, and is it going to be to their specification?
At the same time, he's like just living it up at these conventions and
he's having a
having
great
all
time.
these reports and just
I'm
hanging
just
out at parties and stuff.
I'm just saying
So,
creatively,
he
but I think what bothers me, and this George R. R. Martin's actually a great example of this, and I'm glad you brought him up, is it's the when you enter into this kind of toxic fandom, I think what really bugs me is that the love that these fans profess to have for these pieces of art or these authors or these creators, it's a very hollow kind of love, because as much as they purport that these things change their life and everything, blah, 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 as soon as the creator does something they don't like, they turn on them, and it's like that love is sort of linked with this intense hatred because and it's like there's that hatred that lingers just below the surface, and that's what he captures with Annie so well.
Well, and an innate narcissism too, that I know this content, where this is going to go, the interior life of it better than the creator.
Like, you are the vessel to create it,
Right.
but I know what's good. And like Annie hates him. Like, as that's what I was thinking as I was reading it.
We're sort of into the hook now, but it's all relevant to
we're
history
well
as
into
well.
the hook by this
Yes.
point. But I think that for me, I was marveling. I was like saying out loud, like I was just like, she hates him so much. And so that's why I love that he's able to capture that, because when it comes out, it's so intense.
It's like George Lucas. People
Yeah.
hate George Lucas,
Right.
but they love what he created.
But then
And-
they'll also say, like, I love George Lucas because he created this thing, but I hate him for a million other reasons. And it's like, that's how she is. Like, she'll be like, I love you, Paul. She'll bring him champagne. She does, like, she has those little hollow moments of love. But then when the hatred comes out, it's so much more intense and visceral and violent, And it's like, that's what bubbles beneath the surface. And that's what scares me about fandom in a lot of ways, is that I feel like we become so passionate about something, we become obsessive about it. And it doesn't become about passion. It becomes about, like, and this is my problem with fandom, is like when somebody thinks that they know you better, or they know a piece of art better because they can quote every line from it, or they can name every piece of trivia about it. And I say this as somebody who does that sometimes. It's like that does not mean that, at a certain point you are what's the word I'm looking for? Like intellectualizing and obsessing over a piece of art rather than appreciating it. And I think that that's something that really bothers me about fandom. And I feel like that's sort of how Annie is.
It just leads people to become inarticulate too, because you get the sense that at that point it is part of their identity. They've woven it into the fabric of their being in such a way that it is hard for them to defend how worked up they can get over it.
Yeah. And that's the politics too.
It becomes an addiction. It's the same thing as like
Yeah.
the addiction that King says with the cocaine thing. Like, I mean, for me personally, just this past year, like, we all laugh and we're like, oh look, Mike's obsessed with Stranger Things. Stranger Things was literally my escape when I was going through like the whole divorce and everything like that. I didn't matter that I've already watched the episodes. There was just something about good old Hawkins, Indiana, that I just loved hanging out, and it was just aesthetically pleasing, and it just took my mind off of everything else that was in the world.
Totally.
Now,
but that's very different.
But it becomes an addiction.
Sure.
And that's why, like, look, and that it's different in a sense, but it's also like my obsession with like Steve Harrington is very like Annie Wilkes like, and then reading this book, I definitely did think that, because
would you lock Joe Keery to a bed?
Oh, absolutely, and I would absolutely hobble him.
It is important to note that we're all not immune to this. Like, I've felt the same thing.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah. I've had some dark moments with Buffy.
But you become to, like, for example, like my girlfriend just watched Gremlins.
Yeah.
Right.
Great
I've never
movie.
seen it. And it's gotten to the point where like I think we have like at least 4 or 5 different Mogwai or Gizmo stuff in our apartment, literally within the 3 weeks or whatever. And that's the same type of mentality I have, where it's like I love something so much that I have to just soak up every fucking bit and piece that's out there, and I know where there's a line. And I've definitely sort of crossed it. Like I felt like really fucking wrong when I was at the convention, like the Stranger Things convention last year, like even dressed up as Steve, because I was like, what am I doing? Like I'm losing my mind. Like I've become way too fucking obsessed with this.
What would happen if they did something with Steve's character that you just like hated?
Well, that was the thing. Like, well, before the second season, spoiler alert, Randall had watched. We were watching it in tandem, and finally I had to call off, and I was like, I'm fucking exhausted.
We literally started watching it the minute it got on because I had to write about it, and you were fanning out.
I woke up the next morning, and he goes, "Oh my god, I'm gutted because they just did something to a character." And I literally was watching that second season, thinking that it was Steve, and I was losing my mind. And and so
I
was
losing your mind. In anger?
No. Okay. But I can see how people can cross that threshold, because all of a sudden you've taken away something that meant something in their life that not only just gave them purpose, but gave them comfort. And comfort is anything that can distract us from the idea that we're going to die and that we're actually pathetic and we're meaningless. Because when you scrape away everything, Netflix, all our pop culture, the things that we have, that these luxuries, it's very fucking kind of scary. It's like sitting when I used to sit there and as a kid and try to figure out what nothing meant. And I just kept seeing black, and I was just like, well, that's something. And I would just sit there like, what is nothing? And then it's like, and you get in this sort of depressed existential like rage about it.
Before you were born. That's
exactly, right? And so like when you strip away the things that are our comforts, all of a sudden life gets very scary. And I think that's the people that can't find other things to kind of lean on, like say Annie Wilkes, like that's when you get that sort of murderous rampage, because all bets are off at that point.
Love the nuance too, where she even knows that there are rules that this has to abide by, and it can't just be eating a whole cake, right? Like she doesn't like the first version that he gives her because she knows that's pandering.
I love that
to her.
Yeah, I loved that sequence as well. Well, I mean, it's to the addict, / obsessive angle. I sometimes think about, the proliferation of obsessive fandoms now, and how, we never have any time with our own thoughts anymore, because we're, it's the old, I'm going to sound like a boomer, the old, you're on your phone, you got the tabs open, but I mean, truly, I do feel a change in my own brain since, these things became commonplace. And I do find it harder to sit with myself and reflecting on reading paperbacks as a kid. Like, I was an only child. I had not a ton of friends. I spent a lot of time with my own thoughts, and the thought of doing that now is horrifying. And, it is, and then we just keep piling and piling these things on top of each other so that we're never left alone with our thoughts for even a moment.
Or you have to wait for a next episode to come out. That's no longer a thing.
Yeah.
You don't have to think in between episodes. It's already there.
Yeah.
It's so funny you say that, Laura, because literally like my favorite meme I've seen over the last several years is Ralph Wiggum on a school bus, and he's just going, I'm in danger. And because, it's from an episode, but then I just remember somebody posted that, and then they just said me alone, or me when I'm left alone with my thoughts. It's like, I'm in danger. And it's like, that's literally me. So I totally relate with that. And I know what you mean, and the idea of like constant consumption of this kind of stuff. But anyways, I guess like I was so struck when I was reading Misery, because Paul has that whole section where he talks about a fan sending him photos of the misery room she created in her house.
Yes.
And then he wrote back, and he's like, oh, that's really cool, thanks. And then she writes back again with like 10 more photos and 10 more pages of things. And then he is like, okay. And then she starts to get mad because he's not responding in the way that she wants. And this is happening through letters, And I think that it just makes me think of social media, where these things happen so much more quickly now. That whole idea of tweeting at somebody.
Sure.
Sending things.
We've even experienced this.
Yeah.
People will Facebook message us about. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And we're like plebes. I mean, so like I can't even imagine.
We're garbage.
Yeah, we are.
We are garbage.
We live in a dumpster.
We are officially garbage.
I just got here, but I'm definitely garbage.
The thing is that comes from a sense of place for King.
Yeah.
Who had. This is fucking crazy, but I didn't even realize this actually.
We're back to history.
We're back to history a little bit. But this is according to the Complete Stephen King Universe, A Guide to the Worlds of Stephen King by Stanley Wyatter, Christopher Golden, and Hank Wagner.
Hank Wagner.
Love Hank from Breaking Bad. Misery was...
It's that Hank, everyone!
Misery was clearly inspired by events in King's own life. He has been stalked by obsessive fans. And this is crazy. And his home has been invaded by someone claiming to have a bomb.
Yeah.
In 1980, he reportedly signed one of his books for a stranger who actually did call himself King's #1 fan. That lost soul was history's big hero, Mark David Chapman.
No shit.
what?
That I did not know.
Crazy.
Is that crazy? So he would, who would obviously earn his place in history for shooting John Lennon shortly after.
Surprised he didn't have a copy of The Shining in his pocket instead of Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah. Oh man. I just listened to a long podcast about Mark David Chapman too, and so he's a funny guy. He imagined there were little soldiers or little. I'm not going to get into it. I won't digress further. Weird guy. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah,
it's
Jared Leto.
He ate soy and ice cream to get to that role.
Oh,
I was wondering about that though, because this seemed so drawn from I'm like, what letters is he getting?
Yeah, and it just makes me think. I'm like, I guess it just, like you said, it happens to us even occasionally, but it's the idea of the response sometimes. Am I giving are you giving them the response that they want? Because I've seen fans on Twitter, people will retweet stuff oh, look at this insane exchange, some fan just piling on some celebrity because they're not responding to their tweets, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think that is just really spooky and kind of scary to me.
Even the wholesome ones, I think we've all maybe heard the story of the woman who was 90 and she was I'm not dying until you finish the Dark Tower series. You have to finish it before I die, which don't ever put that on anyone.
Yeah.
I remember though as a child, again, I keep bringing up my childhood a lot. I apologize.
No,
for that.
go for it.
We all do.
I just remember being and this is when I still intermittently believed in God. And at the moments that I would pray, it would be just, let me get through the last Star Wars movie, of the new editions. How depressing is that? The new, Phantom Menace era of theatrical releases, or when I started reading Harry Potter, if I could just make it till the end of Harry Potter, you're I'm good.
No, but I've had those thoughts in my head for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
And what it is an outsourcing of fulfillment that isn't sustainable.
Yeah,
oh, totally.
Exactly.
It's maladaptive.
But every year comes another thing. We do these anticipated lists for COS, and we do them from albums, and now we do it for film and TV, and there are so many things every year that I come back and say all right, if I could just get to this, I'm good. And that's it's crazy, but that's exactly how I live.
Well, you were saying that because to Stranger Things season 3, and then what's the other thing coming out this summer that you're stoked about?
Oh, well, obviously there's chapter 2 for it, but
yes.
I'm really excited for Jordan Peele's The Twilight Zone.
But you were joking in quotes in the thread. You're just like I've got to get to the summer. It's such a long time.
Well, it's because Stranger Things doesn't come out until July 4th.
I know, but it's I know what you mean though, because
is your July 4th party going to be insane?
Oh, it's going to be nothing. I've already talked about with Sam, or just I don't think you're gonna. I don't think you've ever seen me to this obsession before. I've been this way where I've gotten wild. Twin Peaks was insane.
We were all nuts about that.
That was wild, and to the point where I think we were hanging out for a few days before that and having drinks, and we literally would not shut the fuck up about. The
I was not. That was a case of me being obsessive because I never shut up about it. But the thing is, that was actually a really good example of I think. That was one where I had to tell myself to let go of how I wanted it to happen, because part of me was it needs to answer this, it needs to do this.
And Lynch does not.
No, and Lynch does not do that. And that's the thing was
what?
I actively had to
they want us to do pie.
Approaching the finale, I actively had to tell myself not to expect things and to embrace what was given, because I know Lynch, but I also know that it's I didn't want to
literally what the season's about,
and I didn't want to hate it because it didn't give me what I wanted.
No, and I think
that that's something that you actively have to do sometimes, and it's in relationships too. You sometimes you have to realize that. I think that's a healthy relationship, is realizing that this person does not exist to do your every whim.
No.
Yes, exactly. That's what love is.
People can't realize that, because there is also a critical component, right? And something isn't bad because it didn't give you what you want.
Right,
But
exactly.
some people equate it to being bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Oftentimes
But
it's
also
better.
sometimes things should give you something. So it's really hard to walk that line.
And I think
is it a massive plot hole, or am I
Right.
just upset?
Right.
And people are trying to toe that line left and right. I made the joke about Hank when my boy in Breaking Bad, but look at Better Call Saul. Literally the show started off as being its own thing, and then all of a sudden had to lean heavy into Mike Ertentrout's Jonathan Banks, his character, because they need to have some sort of more connection
Bad
tissue,
prequel,
connective tissue
yeah.
for Breaking Bad, because the fans were like, well, this isn't enough of where's Walter White and Jesse and I need Gus, and that's why the seasons have just gotten more and more expansive with that. However, I do think that a lot of these creators are getting very smart about ways to make it happen, as opposed to saying remember when. They're saying well, this is also what happened, this is also what was going on at the same time.
We live in a world now where it's we are guaranteed Easter eggs.
Oh yeah.
Instead of just being surprised and delighted, we are just where are they?
And you can be clever about it, and you don't have to go the approach that Lynch did, which the thing is, I love what Lynch did. I love Twin Peaks: The Return, and one of my things in hindsight now, even especially just right now realizing this, is how amazing that is. Such a fuck you to that sort of culture.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what makes Lynch so great. He's a narrative genius, because that's people are like, oh, I don't get it, but you can really see if you just accept his worldview when you go into any one of his television shows or movies, it is the most delightful experience you'll ever have, and it's letting go. And isn't he into Eastern spirituality and stuff? It is really often about just letting go.
He says don't try to deconstruct it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes it's a purely enjoyable experience, because you don't have to do that. Ugh.
Well, and the way Lynch frames it too is he's why would you want to deconstruct?
Yeah.
He's that for him, that's not enjoyable.
Well, he's just very simple.
For some people, that is a part of that's the thing, is fandom has evolved. Part of the enjoyment is in the deconstruction and the discovery.
Sure.
And I think that marks a different kind of fan. But I think that what Lynch is getting at is there is a purer enjoyment when you can kind of just accept something for what it is, let it marinate, let it sit with you and move on. And I think that that's something, because I like to deconstruct stuff every now and then, but I'd like to think that as I've gotten older, I've gotten better about accepting a piece of art for what it is. And you can deconstruct it, but you also just meet the creator where they want to be.
No, I mean, he's very, for as complex as his works are, he's very orthodox in the way that you approach it. He says, go, absorb, and then enjoy it afterwards, which is what part of the reason why I think he loves Pie and Coffee so much is because that's been the whole norm. It's you go watch something in pop culture, you come back and you just meditate over it with Pie and Coffee, and that's literally been in True Romance. It's literally been in a bunch of different pop culture mediums of just that idea of the Pie and Coffee moment of being able to just kind of absorb and digest exactly what you just saw, as opposed to doing it in the moment, which is why I can't stand when people will just sit there on their phones and be looking things and deconstructing it as they're fucking watching something. And I'll just be like, God, just let it happen.
This feels relevant to the workshop process. Where, I feel and everyone has differing opinions on this, but what you're talking about feels to me like the idea of giving something what I call a charitable read, where you're trying to come at it in a way where you are what is this author trying to do? And totally leaving the idea of yourself behind and helping them by giving critique that is geared towards the charitable read and not towards your ideal story, which is how you find the readers that are good for you.
Well, I think this conversation's been really fascinating just because I think it's interesting that the history and the hook sort of interwove in the way they did. Because I think,
they have to.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the themes of this book are so personal and interwoven with King's life, but also the way that I think it's, almost meta in the sense that it's about how we consume this kind of work, and popular culture and the way our relationships to it. And I think that's what really sort of gives the book a lot more weight. But then it also has a really cool story. But so what do you guys think? Do you think we should move on to talk about the structure and format?
I'm game.
Let's do it.
Look at me. Look at me, teacher.
Welcome to Structure and Format, your favorite section of the show. You okay, Mike?
Yeah, I'm good.
We do joke that this is a fan favorite. Structure and format.
Well, I think it is interesting, though. I guess I'll start this off as saying that I think pain is sort of really integral to the way that the story is told. I think that a lot of the book, especially in the early going and And even in just the way that the ends and the letters are missing from the misery text, and the way that like the handwritten ends, or when they're not there at all, gives it sort of a disorienting, like a disorientation kind of feeling.
Parallels the wear and tear.
Yeah, and I think that's really neat. I think what really struck me in terms of the way the book is written is that King sort of really does write it from behind sort of a gauze of pain and suffering, which is very something that we've talked about in this podcast before, is that a lot of times King will use somebody's struggles with pain and quote unquote misery to help develop a character.
True.
In the throes of pain, sort of you see the truest self of somebody. And so I think that there was a lot of that going on here, and that was really reflected in sort of the woozy way that Paul was taking in the world, taking in the reality of what was happening to him. And I think that King did a really good job of capturing that. So.
He also does a lot of the classic King double back, where he'll just mention like, oh, lost thumb, and you're like, wait, what? And then all of a sudden he'll peel back and tell you how the lost thumb happened.
I loved the reveal, and then I was like, I don't know, don't go back, just let me like wonder like what happened.
Yeah. I kind of wish that he did just kind of leave it out of the thing also.
It was so creepy.
Yeah.
I mean, on a technical literal level, we've got 3 sections.
Yeah.
Right. So we've got the first one is Paul. Or no, the first one is Annie with the Nietzsche quote. The second one is
Paul.
Or it might be Misery.
I think it's Misery, and the third one is Paul.
Yes, the second one is Misery with the Montaigne quote, and then the third one is Paul.
I thought the Montaigne quote was interesting too, that choice. And just because Montaigne was the essayist who would just write about himself extensively before that was like a thing, and so it's just kind of interesting in the context of this story, but go on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's my whole. I mean, it sort of mirrors Paul coming into his own by the end.
Yeah, that's true.
And you know what I thought too? This reminded me, just maybe because of the amputation, of Survivor type, and King kind of being like, well, what if the person in Survivor type was introspective and not an asshole?
Yeah, wasn't Andrew Dice Clay.
What would it look like? What would the thoughts be like?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that. Yeah, and I think that, it's kind of like Gerald's Game. Well, obviously it's like Gerald's Game, but in the sense that I think King, we spend so much time in Paul's mind. And I think the way thought processes work, I think is really neat. And there are several chapters that I found very disorienting because it leaps between, writing philosophy, memories, present revelations about like what he's actually experiencing. I love the moments when he just like when King writes it so it's like Annie is just in the room again, like there's no mention of her entering, she's just there. Like that kind of stuff is really spooky to me, because I guess like I've always felt very like if I'm sick and you're kind of drifting in and out of consciousness, that sort of is such a horrible, disorienting feeling to me.
Yeah.
Like when you wake up and somebody's in the room, or the cat's laying on you and it wasn't like the last time you were awake. It's always very strange to me.
It's a very meta book.
Yeah.
So meta.
Incredibly. I mean, like even just the way they do the ending, it's so self-aware of like the kind of cliche horror, which again, I feel like ties back to his like own tongue-in-cheek ways of like poking fun at the genre. Just even the way he does this ending is just, it almost made me realize like, or made me think like, is this the book that Paul was like being tasked to write, that his agent was like, well, hey, you could write this and it'll sell millions. Is this supposed to be his book? Like, it was by the end of the thing where he starts playing with the format and showing that, oh, it was Annie behind the couch, and then, well, no, it's not really Annie, this is actually what happened, and this is real life. Like that whole discussion of this is what happens in a story and this is what happens in real life seems to be built into the structure and format of this book for sure.
Yeah.
I think it supports your theory too about King's relationship to horror. The craft element thing that I was talking about earlier, I love how Paul gradually realizes that what he's writing for Annie is becoming a gothic horror novel. It almost seems like King's insights and opinions and struggle are leaching into the book. Like he can't keep horror out of this one, even though Paul is supposed to be a romance or a mystery writer. And by the end, it's completely become horror tropes. And it feels like King has to contend with that within the book itself. He can't keep it out.
There's a passage that struck me as like the most meta passage. I think we touched on it earlier, but it's because he's talking about his real work, you know, and it's like this, you know, and how like fast cars and all this, and but it was becoming almost like he was trying too hard with it, and it says this on page 297 of my edition. As a result, hadn't his serious fiction become steadily more self-conscious, a sort of scream, look at me, look how good this is. Hey guys, this stuff has got a sliding perspective. This stuff has got stream of consciousness interludes. This is my real work, you assholes. And like, that's exactly what this book is. Like, you know, like, it's like the stream of consciousness and like all the, you know, and it's like, is he even in this moment criticizing the book that we're reading via Paul Sheldon, which he refuses to admit as himself, but it's totally himself. I don't know.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. What do you guys think about the misery sections that we read? Because I think that those are an interesting sort of diversion that we get there.
I will say, okay, so I really do not like the sections in the body where you're starting to read Gordy's short stories. I don't like that. Even as a writer, I don't really find them that interesting. However, as you know, someone has tried to do fiction writing, I do think it was interesting watching him do a first attempt at the beginning and trying to get her to survive or to come back.
Yeah.
And I do love their whole dissection, or his dissection, which feels like Stephen King's On Writer, which a lot of this feels like Stephen King's On Writing. When he talks about what was fair and what was cheap and what was not. So to see him attempt that again, I did actually enjoy that passage to see how he made it actually work and happen. So in that respect, I did enjoy it. But by the end, when you're already in this like thick of the action and he's trying to survive, I'm just like, and especially since there's one part where it's like all scribbly and I'm like trying to decipher it. And I was like, I don't really give a shit. I just keep going. I want to know when the fuck the cops are coming back, what's going to happen in the basement, like all this other stuff.
You aren't interested in the travails of Hezekiah?
It seems...
on the dark continent.
Oh God, we will get to that.
Yeah, I've got a lot of notes on that.
It seems like, and I was very kind of disappointed that we get the end section, because it seems like he was so playing on the concept of the gotta know, that I was very surprised that he lets us see the end of the book, but doesn't let Annie see the end of the book. I was like, come on, like put your money where your mouth is.
Yep.
Don't let us see it, because I do get a little bit invested. I kind of do want to know what happens to Misery.
Right. I agree 100%. I was thinking that too. I'm just like, why are you showing this to us? Like, yeah, that's really neat. Any other thoughts on structure and format?
I was also just really impressed by his romance writing.
Yeah,
like it felt real. Like I feel like
definitely,
like racist shit notwithstanding, like like the style of that writing felt like, oh, he can do it. Like if he wanted to, he could write these books.
Yeah, I always enjoyed that kind of writing in like high school and college, so I found myself a little hooked by it. I enjoyed it as well.
It's like in Ulysses, James Joyce. There's a whole chapter where he kind of stylistically, he adopts all the different sort of literary movements that for basically going back to like Homer and everything throughout this one chapter in Ulysses, Joyce does. And I remember being so impressed by that. And what I kind of love in King's work is every now and then we get to see him toy with other genres. Like, he probably wouldn't write a whole book of something, but it's fun to see him like, oh, he can adapt his voice to write in this kind of style, you know, just like in, I don't know, there's other, like in Dark Half, I believe we get to see like him tackling sort of like a pulpy detective kind of stuff, which then he went on to write a lot more. And that's like his bread and butter now. But
yeah, I mean, like, look, you had mentioned this being like this prelude to Gerald's Game. I absolutely agree, because just in the sense that a lot of this and the most interesting parts of this book are the inner monologue that, you know, Paul's having with himself, for sure. Like that was my favorite part, and like having that sort of self-deprecating angel and demon sort of / vice on his shoulder was very interesting to me to read, and especially in the context of knowing what Stephen King's mindset might have been at the time too. You know, like when he's talking about like the industry especially, and just like how and his relationship of knowing that inside baseball compared to like what Annie's, you know, Annie's approach to the industry, you know, like her as a reader and him seeing her as this kind of just dumb obsessive reader, and wanting to compare that to what he actually knew, what of the demands of the industry
she
were.
Gets angry when he calls it a business.
Yes,
exactly. Don't call it that.
Very interesting.
And that's the reality of it, and that's the reason why he's actually even doing any of this. And like, so to have that sort of dichotomy really embellished with Paul's own thoughts, I just loved every section of that part for sure.
I'm not sure about the ending. Like I don't I sort of think it is clever to, again, play with the actual format of the book to mirror the tension between Paul and Annie, the gotta moment, like we as readers want to know what has happened, and he's playing with us as the author of the book, just like Paul was playing with Annie. But I don't know if it quite works for me.
Well, I do think that the ending is revealing in the sense that, you know, it ends, the kind of big question at the end is like, can Paul write again? You know, like after he's like, the question isn't like, it doesn't end when he escapes from Annie. It ends when it's like, can he, after having been through this and after having you know, reckoned with his own demons, like in terms of writing and who he is as this bifurcated personality writer, like the fact that it ends with him sort of like, it kind of reminds me of what you were saying earlier, Mel. I mean, like the noble profession of writing.
This just pisses me. I mean, I was talking about the fake out. Like, I don't really enjoy the fake out of like, is Annie alive? Where is she? She killed him. No, she didn't. Like, I think that's kind of dumb. And like, that's what I was talking about like the form mirroring the content. And what you're saying too, it just bothers me because at the end of the day, I feel like if you are so torn as a writer with this, like, you need to fucking take yourself down a peg. Yeah. Like, just write. Well,
it made me wonder too if the ending was about, can he write sober, you know? And I think,
well, that was because it feels like this is an inverse of that, because he suggests that he can't write when he's on the, like, he drinks and then he says that that's going to be like a bumper to him, like, you know, like if he doesn't, you know, if he does drink, he might actually be able to write or something in some respect. So it does feel like an inverse to what King says. Although I will say, I think that this whole passage on like page 357 is pretty much just King being as blatant as possible. And he talks about like just the idea of being like what the critical press is of a popular writer. And I think that's kind of that whole rundown of him. At some point, this book, and especially with the way he uses the form, becomes this whole confession for his own self. Like, I almost feel like he's not even writing misery anymore. He's just literally talking about his own thoughts. And I feel like that's pretty much the last act of this book. Yeah. Because with the exception of obviously the core action that's going on with her falling over the typewriter 3 different times or whatever. But I do think at some point he's just like, well, we're almost done. Now it's time for me to just get all my fucking demons on the page here. And I am going to wipe myself clean and kind of tie it off with this sort of meta tongue-in-cheek ending. But here's the thing, I don't also think that this meta ending is as like annoying and as cloying as, say, like, you know, when like Phil Lord and Chris Miller do the type of meta shit where it just becomes like, look, can't you believe that we're doing this? Like, it feels natural. Like, it feels like,
what?
You know, like, exactly, like, we're going there, you know, like, and that's the thing that drives me nuts about most meta stuff. Whereas with this, it feels of its skin.
Yeah, we were talking about that in the text there the other day. We were just like, it's meta in a really interesting way. It's not in a cheeky way.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like the best use of meta to sort of reflect on writing. I mean, I had a love-hate relationship with it throughout the book, and I think it's kind of interesting. This is a very nerdy digression. May I?
No, go for it.
Okay.
Please.
He references Sherlock Holmes and, you know, Arthur Conan Doyle killing him at Reichenbach Falls and the public, fallout that happened after that. And Doyle always felt like he couldn't escape Holmes and no one cared about his other stories. And Sherlock Holmes as a character, whenever he is not on a case, he shoots up with a diluted cocaine solution, and he gets very depressed and anxious, and he's writhing around on the like settee, and Watson is like, "What are you doing?" And at the end of Misery as well, he's trying to, he's basically like he's drinking because he can't take the painkillers anymore, but he's also very restless and unhappy because he can't write. And it's not until he's able to write that he's able to like steady his hands. And so it's like, no matter what he's doing, he needs a fix. Yeah. He needs a fix of the drugs, the booze, or the writing. And, he uses writing while being held prisoner as an escape, just like we binge Netflix when our lives suck. I don't know. It all sort of mirrors itself into a nice little acorn for me.
Yeah, I love that.
Even the hole in the page, like you're in the hole. Yes.
Like, that he has to fall into or look. I feel like wherever you turn in this book, it is a little bit about addiction.
Yeah. Have you ever felt that way as a writer, Mel?
I feel like this is my whole beef with the book, right? Is that he characterizes a relationship with writing as a relationship with something outside yourself. I just don't think that's true. And I think it leads to a lot of like self-victimization.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're a writer who writes. Like, but he is kind of like the little men and the characters that run away from me.
But you can't relate to that at all. It's okay.
I mean, it makes me sound like a fucking like asshole, full of myself person. But I think at the end of the day, if you're not writing, you only have yourself to blame.
Yeah.
So
as a writer, also, I don't know. I always feel like writing is more like pulling teeth. Like I write because I have to, not because I enjoy it. Either I do feel like compelled to do it, because I want to see the final product. I want to see how, but I personally hate the process. But I feel like I'm squeezing it out of myself.
Totally. I hate it. I hate writing. I hate and love writing.
Yeah, it's like a thing you just are like, why am I doing this? This sucks. And like, I don't, but
I know I want to get back to creative writing because I write for a living these days, and it's hard for me to, when I was in my 20s, I mean, all I did was, work my jobs and come home and write plays and I think that I had built up such a momentum back then that I actually enjoyed it. It was fun, but then the thing was I felt very I felt very, what's the word I'm looking for? Imprisoned by my writing back in the day when I was younger, because my moods depended on whether or not I had a good writing day or a bad writing day. And my moods literally depended on that. And if I had a bad writing day, I would fall into like a deep, horrible depression and like couldn't get out of, like, I would just lay on my bed and stare at the ceiling. And it was like, and also I felt like my identity was completely interwoven with the creative writing that I was doing and whether or not people gave a shit about it. And it was a really unhealthy thing. And I think that's why I stepped back from the creative aspect of it. And
but is that different?
Yeah.
That sounds different than like what Paul, like the fact that Paul
absolutely.
is like, I'm free of that bitch misery.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
That's not what you're talking about.
No. I think I was just like bullshitting a little bit. I think we're all just talking about writing.
No, this actually reminds me of a prompt that was given when I was in grad school, where one of the first creative writing courses I took was with this amazing writer named Michelle Morano, and she's at DePaul, and one of the first prompts that she had us was basically writing an essay of like, what are some of your habits to writing, like what do you do to get yourself in the mindset. And at the time, I was such a cynical little shit that I was just like, I don't ever have any, like, I don't put a candle on or anything like that. I don't get in the mood or anything. I just go. It's just like, it's just kind of like the whole thing that the Joker says in The Dark Knight. It's just like, I just, dog chasing a car. Like I'll just do it. Like, and that's still, and I guess in hindsight, there are things that I have to do. Like I can't really be around people when I'm like really doing deep writing and, like actual deep meditative writing. If it's doing like a news article, whatever, I don't give a shit. But like, because it's just easy. The whole time. Well, because it's so set on like fast paced things. But if I'm actually like sitting there with like, a review or something like that, I do need to have some sort of isolation. So that there is some sort of sense of like purpose that can come off as like almost like pretentious to talk about, because that's my worry when I did that prompt in grad school. It's like, well, I don't there's no importance to it, there's no self-importance to it. It's very anarchic. I just go into it.
It really is just kind of like making I totally believe this is all just about pursuing the flow state, right? Like that's what he's talking about when he gets it, the whole of the page. Yeah. I believe in the flow state completely, and I also believe it is very hard to achieve. Yeah. And it is not in your control. No. Like there are things that influence it that we cannot control and that you can't pin down, so that you can't always reliably reach it. In fact, most times you won't. But when you start talking about it as something that is just like always existent but unreachable and like operate, like I just don't like making a weird religion out of it.
I agree.
Totally.
Yeah. But rituals I believe in, like whatever works for you. Totally. It's just a way of looking at things that doesn't ring true for me.
I usually go around the corner and strangle someone, and then I go back and I write no, just like it's for the pros. Cover the mouth and just be like, I need to this.
I put a cat on the stairs, and then I go to town.
No. Well, I thought that was an interesting diversion.
I do too.
Let's move on though to talk about a few characters that we've already talked quite a bit about, but I think there's more to unpack in a little section we call heroes and villains.
More like hero and villain.
Or zeros and villains.
No.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
Hello. There's so many characters in this book. Where do we begin? Dwayne?
Yeah, this is a real ensemble from King, and I gotta say it's on par with like Salem's Lot of the Stand, in that there's just a real rich
tapestry of characters,
grip on
setting too. Location wise, we're going here, we're going there.
Well, let's start with this question: do we like Paul Sheldon?
I do.
Yeah,
I don't mind him because I think he's to me. It's not the morality that I'm cared about with him. Yeah. It's more of, can you actually be a soluble, interesting narrator? And for me, he is. Like, sure. Do I think he's a good guy? No. But I do like him to follow him enough where I never get bored with what he's talking about.
Does it help that you always imagine James Caan?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I just think of him like walking off of the set of Thief and being like, well, what's Rob working? Who's this Stephen King guy? Because he's such a tough, like he's like the guy that like gave like Michael Mann shit for using Tangerine Dream, which is like one of the best scores of all time for Thief, and he's just like, I don't know. He's like on the commentary for it. He's like, I don't understand why you went. Michael Mann want to do all that nonsense. So I can just imagine him on the set. I can just imagine him on the set being like, "This is a horror novel," just like. So I've never read this guy. I'm a Hemingway guy. I like to be by the beach, and I need my I got Grisham. Like
Grisham.
Yeah, I can see him doing that. But so Paul, like, I can't see anyone else but James Caan in this role. And I actually do think it's like perfect casting, even taking away, like, I tried so hard reading this book not picturing him. And his responses, just even to Annie, he's just so dry and logical with her.
Oh, it's impossible for me not to see Caan, and I haven't even seen the movie.
I see like a Great Escape era Steve McQueen for some reason. I don't know, like, because I read the book before I watched the movie. But yeah, he's very handsome in my mind, kind of rugged.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Like Stephen King.
I don't like Paul Sheldon, but I'm perfectly fine with him being the protagonist. I feel like it's all related to like how I don't want to date a writer. I don't want to read about a writer who has problems that I don't think are problems. But I really do enjoy.
Get ready for the rest of the Stephen King's catalog.
I really do enjoy in a not in a sadistic way, but in a way that speaks to King's ability to take a pickaxe to the bits of people that we don't normally see, but that we all know are there. How quickly he is reduced to a pathetic state, and how ashamed he is of it.
Yeah,
those parts were like just so real and visceral for me, and how quickly it happens, and how he returns every time, even though he's like, gotta stay strong. It just never works.
Yeah.
And so I find him very relatable in that aspect. I have a lot of nightmares that are like similar to that sort of thing, where I have to deeply betray my like principles or something like that because I'm held in a situation where my life is at stake.
Yeah. And I think that's really scary. I agree. I feel like King does this a lot, in that he'll give us a character who is kind of at its core not somebody that you would necessarily want to spend time with, which I think in the end can often lead to a richer character. But I feel like whenever he does do that, he couches it by having this character be in a situation where you can't help but like feel for them. Mm-hmm. Like here, we just see him in such pain. Like that's what I always say, like pain is character development. Like he uses this a lot in his books, and I kind of love that. And so, but I think that too, it's the way that King writes about how Paul screams like and begs her like not to hurt him when he's like, please don't hurt me, to her when he sees her with the needle. Like that is so upsetting to me, because it just makes, I'm just like, you'd like to think that you'd be strong in a situation, but you know that you'd just be reduced and so scared and I wrote down at one point just like his dependency on her is so fascinating, because he has those moments where he's like, well, if she died, I'm fucked because I can't move and we're in the middle of nowhere.
Or when he can't scream at the cop at first.
Yeah,
he
that
just,
was actually
physically can't.
Really I marked that as my number one most terrifying passage, because it was like IRL sleep paralysis. But
And I was actually really disturbed that first time he leaves the bedroom and he just looks outside and he sees that it's all muddy and rainy outside. He's like, I couldn't even get through that. And that alone, that to me was like this sense of feeling trapped, because I'm a very claustrophobic person in general. I think I've talked on the podcast before about how my brother used to wrap me in blankets and drag me around, and I would like scream.
Good Lord.
And it's like, because I developed a lot of claustrophobia, but I also just get claustrophobic in life if I feel like I'm in a place too long, or if I get cabin fever really easy. I'm like, I just got to get out. I gotta like break out of whatever.
That's why you got
box
to freelance. And you've had like 18,000 jobs.
I know. It's like freelancing is so good for me, because it's like, if I need to go for a walk, I can go for a walk. If I need to pet the cat, I can pet the cat, you know, etc. If I don't want to wear pants, I don't have to wear pants. It's very freeing. And so
wearing pants makes you claustrophobic.
Sometimes.
Gotta get them off.
Gotta get them off. No, I think that, so I don't know. I guess that's something that I relate with. And I think that it's a nice way to sort of get us on Paul's side. Even, you know, if the book was about him writing fast cars, I probably wouldn't be on his side.
Fucking Fast Cars. It's like the worst book ever written.
Well, it's just funny because it's like, you know, the whole hobbling, but this is really just the humbling. Like, I mean, he just, I know that's like the cheesiest fucking thing, but like, that's
like a joke you would make, but you just said it earnestly.
I know I did say it earnestly, but I will say that's literally all that's happening in this book, because he comes in as this like prideful sort of total 80s blockbuster writer, just like Stephen King, because he's like, you know, I'm going to Hollywood and I'm going to go back to New York and I got to go see my buddies. And it's pretty much like every one of the characters that King always writes about that you know, hangs out at like cocktail parties and all this other stuff. It has like this high life. And he's been emasculated literally to the point where he thinks that his man gland is going to be cut off. So like, I think like
man gland,
you know, and by the end of it, he does get humbled. Like he has to like figure out, you know, he has to be content with sort of his own career and realize the kind of privilege that he actually does have.
And if that's not Stephen King talking to himself, I'll cut off my own left foot and eat it.
Yeah, seriously. Like, so for me, that's why I think Paul was interesting, because I think his arc is actually pretty great in this. Like, I think it's actually a really well defined and like nuanced arc. I usually can't stand like throwing that word nuanced around, but I really do think that his arc here is pretty like, there's a lot of introspection that comes to it. And again, throwing that term around, inside baseball, like this does feel like it could only have come from, or at least this book and especially this character could only have come from someone who has literally experienced the same type of thing, because there's so many small details in this, just as in terms of like the stuff that you do as a writer, but also just the industry like knowledge that you really wouldn't be able to get even just from like interviewing random people. Like there's so much little knowledge that he has on here, that's so the specificity that he welds into Paul's life, that just comes from such a real sense of place and from such a real era. Mm-hmm. Like that's why I also enjoyed was just seeing the sort of nostalgia of like when writers could actually be to this level, you know, with the, you know, obviously you have like the J.K. Rowlings and you have the big writers that are out there still today. But nothing compared to this. Like this is like him almost like trying to like weld his own life with like William Goldman in a way, and which ironically he would actually write the screenplay for this. But yeah, so I in that respect, there's a lot of knowledge and depth to Paul that I enjoy.
Lara, do you like Paul?
No. I agree with everything you just said about his character arc and finding him interesting and enjoying the process. But no, I mean, Randall, you're exactly right. I would want to punch him in the balls repeatedly, except he's been hurt enough.
Yeah.
I think how he's smart. Like, but the book plays the same trick at least 3 times where you think that Paul has won over on Annie, and it's so not true.
But that's what
because you're so allied with Paul's like intrepidness in these moments, and you're rooting for him because the situation is so horrible, and you think like, wow, he really did pull it off. And also he has really good psychoanalytic insights into how Annie operates.
And they both do. So it's like this like outsmarting the wits. But the thing I love so much about it is this thing that almost feels even more of a commentary today of what we were talking about before, of the you know, the reactionary viewer, of you can dream up things in your head as solutions, but what his could you or can you game that he plays as a writer can't apply to real life, which is something which is so funny because we are literally reading a book. And so there's that meta fact of it, like, well, it's like, well, no, we are reading a book and you should be able to dream up the situation out of it. So there's this really cool layered dichotomy between of like what he can imagine up and dream up on the page and what he can do like actually in this room, even though we're reading a fiction book, that I just loved. Like I thought that in that sense is very smart meta commentary, and I love how it pits against someone like Annie, who has really come to grips with the reality of the world. Like he's in awe of Annie, of being able to dream up what she can do to dispose of this state policeman, and so are we. And then there is some pathos to a guy who's literally, his life is coming up with that can you, and he can't even do it for himself. Like there's some sort of pathos to that for me with this character. So like that stuff was, I don't know, I thought that was cool.
Another question.
Yeah.
Do you like Annie Wilkes?
I do like Annie Wilkes. Here's the thing. There are multiple times in this book where I really did feel bad for this character. And there's something and I think that's something that Paul actually feels towards the end of the story. When he sees like little glimpses of her come out with that sort of wholesomeness of, oh, wow, like in a different environment that she might have been raised, she might have been a really great person. And you see little peaks about that. And for me, I hate villains that are just so black and white. And like, I found a lot of really cool like cracks and crevices into this character that were really awesome.
Well, there's something so damaged about her. Like what I'd forgotten from my previous read was that she's not just evil. There's like genuine mental illness going on here.
Yeah.
Like when she self-harms herself, you know, she like draws blood from her forehead. She like bites her lip. She like literally gashes herself in front of him. Just like, you know, very casually, and that was like really disturbing to me when I was reading it. And also those moments when he would talk about her blanking out, and like when she's sitting by his bed, and I remember he talks about her blanking out for like 3 straight minutes and just staring into the middle distance, and then when she started talking again, it was like no time had passed. Like that's, you know, you're dealing with somebody who is very mentally disturbed, and is not just like a cold-blooded killer, but somebody who clearly just has a lot of darkness like in their soul.
But she's a perfect foil. Like I'm just going to do this one description of her that's really towards the end, which is kind of crazy. On page 343 of what is this? Pocket Books edition. With the kangaroo, Captain Kangaroo on the side. Paul was dismayed by the depth of this slyness. He's referring to Annie. He suddenly realized that Annie was doing exactly what he could not. She was playing Can You in real life. Maybe, he thought, that's why she doesn't write books. She doesn't have to. That's such a cool dichotomy. Like that's such a cool foil. I mean, and I can see why King is just so proud of this character, because out of all his villains, this is probably the most complicated villain I think that he's maybe written in a story to date, possibly. Like, I'm trying to think back on like, I mean, Stilson is pretty complicated in this sense and has like a sordid past like Annie. But I mean, I would argue this is easily his most like complicated villain, because he can't really lean on supernatural or any sort of Deus Ex Machina here. Like,
she's such an admirable creation because she's a complicated character who cares about an incredibly simple, basic bitch thing, like this romance heroine. But you have to become so involved with her psyche to see why that might be the case. And this book has such a strange balance of sensitivity and non-sensitivity to like various issues. Like, I was pretty staggered by how sensitively he treats Annie Wilkes, or at least some aspects of her, in that we do kind of sympathize with her at times, and we do get the impression that she is fully realized. How she thinks is something that Stephen King has spent a lot of time thinking about. And she's totally batshit crazy, but her mental illness isn't equated to something that might be harmful in the real world. Like, we don't get the sense that like King is like preying on anyone with depression here. And we do get the sense that there are strange urges in her that she could control, and like there is evil in there too. And like, it also feels like a baseline for like the terrifying trope that Umbridge will later come to occupy in the Harry Potter universe, which is like this matronly woman who has sociopathic tendencies.
Poisoned honey, I think is I always loved that descriptor.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess, you know, not only does he realize her so well, but he also like mythologizes her, because he, you know, that whole idea that she's solid throughout, you know, that she is a statue. And that's something that I feel like, you know, he plays with in the Misery sections with Hezekiah, like the stuff that he says, the idea that, you know, the goddess is made of stone, and that's her power. That's what makes her strong, is because she's made of stone. And there's something. And so I feel like, and then we do see that as emotional as she gets about Misery in the novel and her relationship with Paul, when it comes to violence, she handles it just so like matter-of-factly, you know, like
just terrifying.
Yeah, it doesn't faze her. Like after she kills the cop, the way he describes the way she disposes of the body, and it's just very calm.
Well, it goes back into like King's sort of ways of just turning things into monsters,
Yeah.
like just monsters. I mean, she's very Cujo like the whole idea of the cop coming back at the end, just absolutely paralleled Cujo to me, except, Cujo being Annie Wilkes, like, and just the way that even, there's that sense of hope of like, oh, the cop coming out, like, walking around. And even the way that she approaches him is so similar to that scene with Bannerman at the ranch, except that you're dealing with a human being here. And I think that's kind of like the genius of King, is that I think that's something maybe he even realized with this book, was that he could actually lean back on those genre tropes while also kind of just, he could go 90 miles an hour at that and then kind of double back and go at like, 55 and 60 and just really kind of slowly kind of carve out her character a little bit more. And the way that he's able to pivot between monster and man is, I think, that's like a stroke of genius in this book. I think like the fact that he's able to do both of those things, and again, that kind of taps into the whole meta nature of him wrestling with the horror genre itself in here. But I think that's part of the success to Annie, is that you can have both here, and she is both for sure. Even if there is some sort of quibbles of like mental illness and stuff, the way he talks about it.
I'm really interested because, Laura, you talk with a lot of forthrightness about mental illness, like on your Twitter, and like,
yes,
I want to know your opinions on Annie.
I mean, I found her to be a wonderful villain, a fascinating character. The aspects I didn't like about how Paul was describing her mental illness is he does this at numerous points. He feels like he's an expert in something because he spent a day with an expert. And in this, he's like, oh, during my researches for whatever book it was, like I spent a day in the, psychiatric wing of a hospital.
An asylum.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, this is 1987. This was when the edition of the DSM was the DSM-3. 1987 was actually the year that homosexuality was removed from the DSM as like a mental disorder. So he's speaking with such, certainty about psychiatric illness at a time that I just can't deal with it. I realize this is me looking at it as an artifact of the past, but it's also like, never, ever, ever be so certain when you're talking about mental illness, because like our definitions of it are constantly and radically changing. So that was just another mark against Paul Sheldon for me, was that he was like, oh, I know what she's got. I got the diagnosis. And the way he sort of talked about psychosis being linked to a narcissistic ego. I'm like, is that accurate? I don't know. Like, I mean, but so I think that Annie is actually way more complicated, and to reduce her into like a specific mental illness that she may or may not have. I mean, she's definitely, the character's undoubtedly crazy, but I think it can be a little reductionist to look at her through only that lens. He also kind of negates she's so, because he basically is like, whenever she does something violent, she barely remembers it. It almost reads more like a possession narrative at certain points. There's one part on my my Scribner Blue Book edition, as I'm going to think of it, on page 277. She's doing something awful to him, and then she says she grinned at him. There was craziness in that grin, but he saw something else in it as well, something that really frightened him. He saw conscious evil in it, a demon capering behind her eyes. And I don't know, I underlined that and just wrote, because it's like, is she consciously evil? Like, you could see how he would feel that way. And what is consciously evil? What does that mean? I don't know where I'm going with this. I've got a lot of like curling thoughts about it.
I think you've gone somewhere with it.
Have I?
Yeah.
Yes.
Have I arrived?
I feel like the question is like, that I'm interested in is like, is Stephen King trying to also again take Paul down a peg in his kind of like stupid incorrect assumptions?
Yeah.
Or is King being like, I don't know, she's probably got a little of this and a little of that, and like, I agree with Paul Sheldon.
Exactly. And I can't quite tell where it lands. Nonetheless, I love reading about Annie. I want to, every page she's on, I'm like totally hooked. I think she's a fascinating character, and I kind of meant to reference this in the form and structure, just the whole memory lane thing, and the fact that he learns so much about Annie through a book that she leaves out and wants him to read, just that as a structural thing is super interesting. And, because she, as a storyteller, reveals little, but as a story writer with her clippings, she reveals everything. And so it's kind of like she wants to be found out. She wants him to she sadistically wants him to understand her. Or maybe it is just that she wants to be understood because she's been so left alone in this world, up there where everyone is out to get her, and she's had to cloister herself off. She's complicated. I'm going to say she's a complicated lady.
Well, I find her marriage really fascinating.
Yeah.
Because just the fact that she was married and that he left her for mental cruelty, like I think is the phrase that's used. And it's like, but we don't learn a lot about the marriage.
No. Well, okay, this leads to a point that I think is another thing that I waffle over in this novel. I both appreciate it, and there are points at which it is so prevalent that I'm like, oh, stop. King is so careful not to sexualize Annie, to make sure that we know there is absolutely nothing sexual about this internment of like Paul Sheldon. To the point where, like, it's in my misery section, when she is first described, it's not just that she's solid, she just has no accessible female orifices to her.
I wrote that down too. I think I have that in Pound Cake.
Like, it's crazy. Like,
the use of orifices was so bizarre.
It's just like, that's usually when I look at someone when I meet them for the first time, I go, do they have any accessible orifices?
Accessible.
I do. And again, like I think that solidity stuff is so interesting, and I love the like lack of hiatus or whatever in there. But to also tie that to like, and that means she's not curvy. It's like I'm really
interested.
Weird.
I'm interested in that description in the concept of her being, what's the word I'm looking for, like godlike in a sense, or like a totem. That to me is very interesting. But he does tie it to sexuality.
But I do think it's a good decision on the whole. Like we would not want to read the book where like Annie wants to rape Paul. No one wants to read that book.
Although, didn't she say that the hitchhiker that she picked up, she had a sexual relationship with?
Yeah, she did. And Paul thinks that's not
strange.
true. Paul thinks that she made a pass at him, and then he rejected her, and she got angry.
Right.
Well, I think there's a lot of like mistrust that's in her life that it fuels a lot of her rage. And if you look back on just even the book itself, it's all about her putting some sort of power over a situation, and I have to imagine that power comes from feeling powerless as a child in whatever home situation she was in. I mean, there seems to be that whenever the majority of the times that she gets enraged is when she feels that Mr. Smart Guy is trying to pull a fast one on her. And I feel like that's kind of probably easily what happened with the hitchhiker. Like she says, the thing with the drawings, which involves some King's Dominion, is very interesting to me, because I do wonder, is that actually true? Did she really believe that? Because I don't necessarily feel whatever Annie says is a lie.
Yeah.
Like I think she actually has strong convictions of not lying. Like I think that she actually believes what she says. It's like if the lie is so good enough, like you actually are going to believe it. I feel like that's pretty much her foundation. So like when she says like things like, when she says to Paul, even after like literally all these awful things have happened, it's like, by then you'll have finished the book and we'll be back in New York or Los Angeles or wherever it is you decide to go. And I'll be living my quiet life out here. Maybe we will correspond sometimes. Like, I really think she means that in that situation.
From moment to moment, it changes though.
Exactly.
What I think is interesting about her.
But that's the thing about anxiety about it though. Like, I feel like it's like, I'm just going to like lean on personal experiences here for this, but like I've been on the spectrum from being bipolar for like 10 years now. I'm like an acute anxiety disorder. And one of the things about it is that it works almost kind of like an orgasm, and you start building up so much tension and so much anxiety that the littlest things will just set you off. And it's not that you have any control of it. It's just that you find opportunities to expel a lot of this sort of angst that you've had, and maybe things that aren't actually that are tied to you or tied to the specific thing that triggered you are going to come out also, which is why, he sees in hindsight, like, oh, well, it actually maybe really wasn't me complaining about the typewriter. It was me withholding the idea that I have the power for the book, and she felt powerless on that. Totally. And I think a lot of that is what informs Annie's rage here, is that a lot of the times when she's getting angry at Paul, she's only just letting loose things that have built up, which is why she has to always continue to go to the laughing place. Like, she has to go back there and like reset and to go through. And that is a lot of what suffering anxiety is. It's just this buildup. I always just see it in my head as like when you like play Street Fighter or something like that, and there's like the bar above you, or like the life bar. Like I always see it like, oh, how much are you going to be able to sustain until you have to get it out somehow, which is why you have vices. Like you have addiction, you have like the obsession. That's why she probably loved the cereals every week because it escaped her from that. She was able to pour herself into that, so she didn't have to think about the anxiety about that, which is why she wanted more pages from Paul as things were getting worse. As things are getting crazier and crazier, she's like, I need to just read it. Let me just hear it, because if she doesn't, she's going to have to go back to her thoughts. It's like that meme we were talking about before, the Ralph Wiggum
That's why
thing.
we get such an impression that she exists beyond these pages.
Yeah.
We get that one glimpse from Paul that's like, oh, maybe it was this thing, and from there we are confident that like King has developed this woman to behave in ways that are consistent with her character when we don't see the whole character, but we just know like she's realized. I think it's like really, it's tough to pull off. She's like predictable in her unpredictability. Like it's weird.
And I think it really helps the fact that he makes her incredibly intelligent, while on the surface, it's just like the judge a book by its cover sort of thing. Because
And she's like motherly and childlike at the same time.
Yes.
Like it's so weird.
I found that so compelling, like how she has these little girl moments where she looks lost and stuff. And like, I don't know, I have relatives that feel that way, that I always feel are like a little unstable. And that, I remember that feeling from childhood, and it's just, am I the adult in this situation? Oh no, and yeah,
it can't be me.
But I found that to be very real. Whether or not he accurately describes her, diagnosis, he does latch onto some very real, believable characteristics that feel relatable and feel very frightening.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Paul or Annie or Dwayne?
Well, I love the fact that we get as you mentioned, a lawnmower man.
Yes.
Lawnmower Man Dwayne.
Do we want to talk about Lawn Boy?
All right. Well, before we get to that, I do want to ask, a little bit more on Paul and Annie for a second. Is the death for Annie over the top? Too over the top for this book?
I think so. Especially because she dies with her hand on a chainsaw.
Yeah.
I think the whole like it is I guess satisfying at that point to have like book pages stuffed in her mouth and to see her witness what she thinks is the manuscript burning. But it does feel like the only borderline supernatural thing in this book that she just won't die.
Yeah.
Like she should be dead.
Yeah.
She's a Rasputin, a real Rasputin.
She is. Like even with the fingers under the door.
Oh,
it was. I don't know. It felt like. I guess it's just great plotting and sense, because I still thought that she was out there behind, when he opens the door and she's standing there. I did have to reread that section real quick and be like, wait, is she really there? And obviously, she's not, but I guess it does fit into the idea of like she's still out there sort of feel. But I guess it's also like trickery on the narrator because he presents it that way at the end. And so I guess that was the only thing I was like kind of chewing on after reading about it. Like am I all right with that sort of betrayal? Because that doesn't really happen so much in the rest of the book, and that it's only towards the end when he actually starts fiddling with the details.
Wait, did you say betrayal?
Almost.
What
yeah.
betrayal?
Well, the idea that like all of a sudden we are presented with pretty much all the stuff that happens.
Yeah.
And then we only find out that she died until later on. The thing in a weird sort of sense to just keep you on your feet. I guess it's just show that that's maybe how he feels in his PTSD moment. But I don't know. I did that. In terms of the Annie character, I did wonder like what everyone else thought about that and how they handle her demise between literally how she dies to, I think let me go through them. So she's burned.
Yeah.
She gets all the champagne bottles that are on her
the glass.
She falls on it, right? And then he's trying. He wanted to hit the typewriter with her, right, like on the head.
Yeah,
but she hits the back. I think she trips over it 3 times.
She falls over it several times.
Knocks her head on the mantle.
In the mantle, and then
he chokes her with burning pages.
So we know that Annie is already this incredibly smart person. Is it a little too convenient that she goes all the way to the barn instead of down the hall to get Paul?
Yeah, I mean that's where there was 2 moments where I felt like things got really sensational. And I mean this is a book where she cuts off his foot with and then blow torches it and then cuts off his thumb and stuff. But
because that barn thing only exists so they can do that thing where you think she's still out there. Yeah,
and that to me felt a little silly. I think, and then same with her running over the cop with the lawnmower, which is in my misery section. It's I think those are just moments that feel a little silly and take me out of the world a little bit because it felt so it felt so. I don't know, raw and brutal, and then suddenly I'm getting stuff that you would see in sort of a C grade King like film adaptation.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously, like literally, there is that scene, and sometimes they come back again.
It is. Oh no, there is.
So
I have one more.
Yeah.
That's more of just a fun one that's revolves around these characters. In your own Can You, at what point in Paul's narrative here would you feel you could have gotten out of it? Or do you feel like you could have gotten out of it?
I mean, I probably would have died immediately.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I think that, and I think it's an interesting point. But when the two cops show up, and he knows that they probably could have taken her, but that's the point. Is I think that he was at that point he wanted to exact his own revenge on her, so he didn't do that. But I mean, I think that he probably would have been able to get away if he had done what he did with the previous cop with those two. So, but yeah, I don't know about earlier though.
Would you have tried to go upstairs?
I don't think he could have. His legs are so fucking busted.
He crawls a lot towards the end.
My legs are so fucking busted.
I mean, by the end of it, he's literally like Commando, like just going everywhere.
But he's healed up at that point.
Yeah,
that's
more
true.
healed.
That
A
is
little
true.
of his
Okay.
strength, and he's going into his, what do you call it, like berserker mode.
Yeah.
All the adrenaline.
Yeah.
He's also so doped up too in the
Yeah.
early going.
All right, and
My fear, and this is again like I have literal nightmares about it because I think this might be the case. I think I would have been so cowed by the time that cop showed up that I would have been like, well, why would I yell? She's my friend.
so you would have gotten you got a Stockholm syndrome.
I have to write for her.
Yeah, the only thing I kept wondering is the fact that we never go upstairs. Was there really a phone up there?
A phone?
Like a working phone?
Who knows?
It's kind of like
Who would she call?
I feel like the upstairs in this story is the FedEx package Castaway. Like the one thing that the one resource he doesn't try. And that kind of drives me nuts the entire like, especially on that second trip, because I do feel he was healthy enough to get out of the wheelchair and maybe crawl out of it.
I just don't think he could have done it.
We'll never
And
know.
we only know that like 2 cars have gone by in months and months and months.
Yeah.
Even if he crawled to the road, like she'd probably just find him out there after hours.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of things in this that remind me of funny games.
Yes.
I mean, between the like meta, like, reversing and going, oh, nope, that didn't happen, to the like every little place you go and everywhere you turn, it's a dead end, running out into the road. And then, the killers are in the car. He's envisioning all of those scenarios. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly, I think I would just also have just immediately collapsed, or like I would have like tried to kill myself. I would have OD'd on the pills.
Yeah.
I would have. That's what I would do. I like in every scenario where like, how would you survive this? I'm like, I would kill myself.
So when you found that supply, you're all going all in.
I know what to do.
Well, I like that King considered that though, because he very much gave like the whole idea of the Scheherazade. Scheherazade, like that he is the Scheherazade because he's keeping himself alive with the story,
Yeah.
like that's the only thing keeping him alive as it goes on, because I think like King was probably nagging himself with the question. He's like, why doesn't he just kill himself, at that point? But I think that's been that sort of is a very
It's also
interesting
important that
thing.
he's high.
Yeah.
Like a high percentage of the time. If you are left sober with these kind of thoughts, I think you'd probably reach for those pills way quicker.
Oh yeah.
Novril. Any other thoughts on character? Because I got to tell you, I'm feeling like moving into a very apt section.
Oh, it is an app section.
Yeah, it is a section we named after this book. It is called Misery, and we're going to go there right now.
She died. She just slipped away.
Slipped away! Slipped away! She didn't just slip away! You did it! 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 You murdered my misery!
Annie!
Welcome to Misery. This is a section based on the book Misery.
Which you're reading.
Yes, which is what we're talking about. And this is where we talk about things that made us miserable or that we just didn't all that much care for in this book. I already mentioned one of mine, which is, and maybe it's just the image of Annie riding a lawnmower that made me laugh a little bit, but just her stabbing the cop with the cross, which I thought was kind of cool. And then literally just coming into the shot, puttering in on a lawnmower and running over his head. It just felt a little bit silly in this book, where the pain and the assault, everything had been kind of I don't know, just very matter of fact and brutal. And suddenly I was getting sort of a cartoon murder, happening here. And that was, I think, one of my miseries. So.
I guess it comes from the sense of time and place. And I think this is going to kick off like a lot of the discussion I think we'll go into just how King portrays certain people. But maybe it's because there wasn't Twitter and there wasn't YouTube and all this other stuff. And he's really just kind of basing it on his own sort of knowledge of what the genre seems to be at the time, or in the stereotype. But just his portrayal as this one-note fan really kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because that's just not the reality. Like, and
Wait, who's a one note?
Well, the one note fan for Misery, like Paul's like fans, the way that Paul sees.
Well, yeah,
like,
that's just how
fans,
he sees them.
True, but that also comes into literally everything else he's talking about the writer industry, which literally is stuff that King's baking into it from his own prior knowledge. So it just felt very like, well, they're romance novels, so they're all going to be the same housewife that has nothing else to do but read these novels, which just isn't true. Like,
but
and
it's
like
the demographic.
Yeah, I just felt it was a little lazy. Like, whereas everything else has a lot of complex notions and diatribes, and even down to when he's discussing like the grieving of fictional characters, and he brings up the whole like anecdote about the librarian or the person that he worked with at the library, grieving the characters, and how everyone has to deal with that sort of feeling of a fictional character being gone and that weird relationship. That had complexities to it. But anytime he would describe the actual fan, it was the same fucking thing over and over again. It was just like, oh yeah, this middling housewife, or this one.
But I think it's like he resents Misery, so he resents the fan.
Yeah, I just felt it felt a little like when people go, oh, the sci-fi geek that just sits in his basement. It just, for me, that...
Yeah, but that's true.
Oh, you think so? Well, I'll have you know that I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I go to the gym like every day. I just... for me, it felt very like of its time, of like, this is how stereotypes were born. Like, and me, that was literally the only thing I just kept going like, you don't have any other examples, any other anecdotes? There's not one other guy like, or other person that's out there that like literally was like that kind of shocked you a little bit. There has to be at one point. I don't know.
It almost seems related to like how Paul and King view writing as this like grand, scary, noble profession that like the fans are all like beneath them in a very similar way.
The plebes.
The plebes. I really hated how in a book that again is trying to be very careful about not sexualizing Annie, and in fact not having anything to do with sex in the book, it opens with a rape metaphor and closes with a rape metaphor.
Yes, I flagged this too. Mm-hmm.
It's so strange and glaring, and it almost feels like he's trying to make up for the fact that there's no mentions of any kind of sex throughout. It's just bad. It's just
when
gross.
you say close, is that when he's like laying on her?
Yeah, I'll
and
rape you.
He basically, she rapes him to life with her breath in the resuscitation segments, and then while he's like strangling, he's like, he basically says like, so I raped her, but like I raped her with my hands, and like I've got to like rape the life out of her. It's like he gets raped in, and then he wants to rape her out, and it's like,
he's like, suck the book.
Suck my book.
Yeah,
suck my book,
I was
mommy.
like, what are you doing, dude? Like, that was a big line you just snorted. Like, no, I agree. I had written those things down. Another thing I had was this was a necessary plot point, but it just annoyed me and it made me mad at Paul. So it's not really a problem, but dude, like, you only have one copy of your book in your possession. Like, you finish a book, you don't have a single copy anywhere, and like even in the book he acknowledges, he's like, everybody told me I shouldn't do that, but I did it anyways. And I'm just like, that pissed me off.
It felt a little convenient.
It felt convenient, and it just felt like dumb. I'm just like, no, this guy would not do that. Like, it just made me mad. I mean, I understand it needed to be that way for the story, but it's just like, even if it was like a floppy disk or something, I don't know. It's like, which, I mean, I guess maybe in the 80s he wouldn't have been writing that way, but it's just like... it
would have been like 5 floppy disks. Like, he would have had to have one of those like plastic packs of them.
But I just got so annoyed. I'm just like, it just made me mad, because I'm just like, dude, that is stupid. Anyways.
Yeah, but even his reasoning for it is pretty good, because he talks about the idea that he would have to go to a copier place and it would feel real at that point. I can see that reasoning for that, because there's definitely been situations where, I mean, my dad was a publisher of magazines like for 10 to 30 years, like for 30 years or so, and Still is actually. And he would always say, whenever he'd come home and tell me about some meeting, he'd be like, well, I don't really want to talk about it because it hasn't happened yet. Like, it's still in development. And I see where there's some superstitions tied to that. Like, I've definitely seen that in the past with him for sure, where he'd be like, yeah, we had a great meeting and we talked about things, but I'm not going to think about it until it actually happens. And I feel like that's kind of like the reasoning he gave for this. Having said that, it is very convenient to be like, well, there's no more fast cars, so.
Other moments of misery that you guys had.
So pretty much all the like Africa stuff.
So bad. It's so bad.
I mean, like, and I get that he's writing within the conventions of this like gothic fiction in an era in which they, spoke of things just, inherently in a racist way. But like even, and there's two layers of Africa stuff going on, because one, he's the rare bird from Africa, the rare bird,
the rainbow
bird.
The
sad eyes. And so he's making references to Africa for that reason. But then also even down to seeing Annie as this like totem. Whenever something seems incomprehensible or terrifying, and to him in some way, he's like, oh, Africa, like it's like a weird stone idol. And basically like, I don't know, the whole plot of Misery's Return is some like Lovecraft ass, Joseph Conrad ass bullshit, and I can't deal with it. I was like, as soon I wrote in the margin, oh no, multiple times. I just can't do it.
Yeah, it's softened somewhat by it being a book within a book, but it's like the Hezekiah stuff is so like
you
absurd.
Get the sense that King is definitely on board with what Lara's talking. Like the very opening of before we get anything is this weird page that just says Goddess Africa.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, and that's he screams at the cop. He's like, Africa!
It's so weird.
Yeah. All I could think of though is just Toto. Every time you brought it up, because we just had to hear that fucking song all year because of Weezer. All I kept thinking was like, and it's like around the same time that the song was, pretty popular. So I did,
It's just like, I guess on this podcast we've talked a lot about how, like, when he writes people of color, they always get really intense dialects.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? But he doesn't do that with most other with a lot of other characters.
Oh, he doesn't with Mike Hanlon. Thank God.
No, he doesn't with Mike.
No,
but
no.
it's like it's more when they're supporting characters.
Mm-hmm.
And and this goes back, I'll always remember Trucks, where everybody talked, just like normal human beings, and then the black cook came by and suddenly it was like, why is he talking like he's from the 1800s, like, a stereotypical 1800 slave or whatever. It's like that's the stuff that drives me nuts, and that's what the way he writes Hezekiah, it's like so bad.
Yeah, although in terms of the genre that he's written, like if you look at you had mentioned Lovecraft, like Lovecraft would write the same type of thing.
And I mean that's why I'm saying it's softened a bit by the fact that it's a thing that Paul's writing, not what King is writing.
Yeah,
but it's still like,
I mean, I didn't read that section because it was just like, I can't do this.
It's just so much.
I was like, you don't have to do this.
Yeah, it's like I'm not sure if it's self-aware enough. Does it quite get there?
I agree.
And I mean, I flagged again. This is all of this has the same issue. It's a relic of the era in which it's written. It was written in the 1980s. The protagonist is a dude and the villain is a woman. Causes a few problems, and there's like a lot of misogyny throughout in Paul's just the way he thinks. And just little anecdotes he uses where he's getting Annie's editor notes, and he says. He thought of this as his "Can I help you, lady" expression. That was because most editors were like women who drive into service stations and tell the mechanic to fix whatever it is that's making that knocking sound under the hood, or going wonk wonk inside the dashboard, and please have it done an hour ago. And, thinking about waking up next to a hot, a girl that he thought was hot at night, and then
she's a goblin in the morning.
Goblin.
Yeah. He also uses the word goblin a bunch, and it's like, what in Beldame? And it's like, fuck off, just like, I can't. Like,
and the divorce thing, where it's like women always leave because they get fed up.
Well, his perception of women in this is awful. Like, in the sense that, like, even during all of this torture and pain, we get a lot of inner monologue with him, and he's had like past relationships, and we never get any of it. He never even meditates on the.
We get Joan's bra.
Yeah, well,
it's nice to have,
and a trip to Hawaii where he sees the suckling pig. But it's bizarre to me. Like, and then maybe that's just his way of showing that, like, oh well, I'm so raptured up in the industry and the life that I don't see anything other than, a buxom blonde that I wake up to in the morning or whatever. But like, that was definitely like a weird, like, what,
also, in the book that he's writing,
yes.
Misery has no dialogue. She can't remember anything. She spends half of it buried alive and the other half sleeping covered in bees.
Bees.
Not the bees.
Not the bees.
That's all I could think of.
And then we get Jeffrey and Ian instead.
Yeah.
The boys.
Oh, and Mrs. What's-Her-Face.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Miss Havisham or whatever. I don't know what it is. She's like, oh, my dairy. And like, Mm-hmm.
Anything else that made you miserable?
All right, so I had bookmarked a lot of the writing shit, but the worst one I think that encapsulates what I'm talking about is when he turns in the second version and she loves it. Mm-hmm. And this is on page 180 of the pocketbooks. Yet something in her attitude as she stood in the doorway fascinated him. It was as if she was a little frightened to come any closer, as if she thought something in him might burn her. It wasn't the subject of premature burial that had done it, and he was wise enough to know it. No, it was the difference between his first try and this one. That first one had all the life of an 8th grader's How I Spent My Summer Vacation theme. This one was different. The furnace was on. Oh, not that he had written particularly well. The story was hot, but the characters as stereotyped and predictable as ever. But this time he had been able to at least generate some power. This time there was heat baking out from between the lines. Amused, he thought, she felt the heat. I think she's afraid to get too close in case I might burn her. Just the power of the writer.
Yes. I did think that was a bit much.
There was also a moment where he got like kind of silly, and he was talking about, I don't have the exact page, but he was talking about a horoscope, and it was like in a macabre like context, and he calls it the horror scope. And it was like cheeky in like a way that the rest of the book isn't. And I was like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. Anything else?
The lines from Fast Cars are really funny.
Yeah.
I don't have no wheels, Tony Bonasaro said, walking up to the girl coming down the steps. And I am a slow learner, but I am a fast driver. This is his literary fiction.
I know, and he's like this way. Like after he finished it, he's like, "Well, you just won a National Book Award or whatever."
He says later, like, it was the closest you got to the truth,
yeah.
The fucking truth. It's like
it would go on to become the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Yes, hell yeah.
Yeah, what's funny is like I guess some of the things that started getting a little tiring to me was King loves gallows humor.
Yeah,
and I usually like it a lot too, but a lot of it I felt like he leaned on it a little much sometimes in the book, and to the point where it was almost sort of distracting, because at some points I was kind of confused on like whether or not he was actually even terrified anymore. And I guess terror kind of commingles with that sort of humor, like you kind of just start laughing when you're just like that manic about things. But it got a little too cheeky sometimes, like when he would do like the parentheticals. Like King loves to do this thing where he'll have an early sort of that illusion where he talks about how the mother was talking about how Paul's like this imaginative writer. Mm-hmm. And King loves to just have that sort of repetition callback in his books. So vivid. And for me, it was like, get the hell out of here. Like, I found myself like almost like in my head, just like shooing it away, just like, all right, stop.
Did you like the rinse one?
I thought it's the same thing. I'm trying to think of the example of a past book that he does that in.
He does it in like every book.
Yeah, he does it in every book.
But there was one. Maybe it was I guess it's the beep beep thing in it is fine with me. But there was one recent book last year that drove me fucking absolutely nuts when the repetition, because it wasn't that compelling to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think that this was very compelling. Like, we get it. All right, yeah, you're a writer and you come up with ideas. Like, I don't need to be reminded of this like one like sort of forgetful conversation that your mother had like with a neighbor or something. Like, it just didn't seem, I don't know.
I was of two minds about it, because it did kind of annoy me at moments, but I also thought it kind of worked in this context, because so much of this book is the rhythm of it, and the rhythm of his thoughts and coming in and out of these sort of hazy things. And that's to me where those kind of half fractured recollections kind of make sense.
Yeah.
As like you're doped up, you're in pain, you're sick. And so for that reason, it just added to the sort of poetic, like dragging you along rhythm of the whole story. But it was also maybe one or two less.
Yeah. Well, and he does it like, so I guess the worst, I'm trying to think like can you baby, can you dig your man in the stand? Oh, yeah. He does the lyrics to that like nonstop in that book. And I think that's like the example. It just kind of reminded me of that. And there's another one in Christine that I'm starting to remember now at this point, that where he did that, maybe something that LeBay says or something, but it just comes off as distracting sometimes for me because I'm just like, I want to keep going, and I don't need to have these pauses. And I'm the type of person that I need to like absorb everything. Like, and so if there are distractions like that, I'm going to see it. I can't just gloss over it. Like, like Dan's talked on this podcast, how he's able to kind of speed read sometimes because he just can find like the real beats and just get to them. I am not that. Like, no, I'm like the person at the museum that's like, oh, there's another passage here to read. Oh, cool. I'll go read it. And then like, meanwhile, all my friends will be like, we get going. We're done with this exhibit. So for me, yeah, that was kind of a slight misery. Not that bad, but it was just enough where I was just like, not this again.
One final misery. Anybody?
No.
Well, you know what I hear, Colin?
Oh, the book's called Misery.
Oh, yeah.
I hear the rusty gates of the cemetery calling. So let's pull up our hearse to the cemetery, get out, and let's browse those headstones.
What's the bottom of the truth? Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond that cemetery ain't human at all.
Welcome to the cemetery. This is the section of the podcast where we talk about the things that scared us, spooked us, made us squirm in our beds that we're chained to. What freaked you guys out? I'll start.
Then don't ask a question, Randall.
Look, this is the way I host. Let me just say that I even like in the way that it opened in a way with her giving him mouth to mouth or whatever. I think the thing that really upset me was the way he described all the like vanilla cookies and chocolate ice cream and chicken gravy and peanut butter fudge on her breath. Cause like, breath that smells like food or things like that is just something for me that I get really ill by. Like if I smell like, that kind of stuff on other people's breath, and especially if it's like right in my face. Like I remember taking a quiz in high school, and somebody next to me, it was like 8 a.m, and somebody was eating Cool Ranch Doritos, and the smell of them at 8 a.m. made me so sick I had to go throw up in the bathroom. And so it's like always been a weird thing with me is like I just don't like to I just don't want to smell food necessarily, or at least like I don't know. It depends on the time and the context, but
I'm the same way. That
description made me so ill,
and that's something that's lingered with me. Like when I think about the foulness, like it kind of goes back to, and it continues and evolves with like even when she's talking about like the gravy. There's something about like for me like food stuff is so gross. Like if someone has an open wound and is like gushing from blood, I will immediately run over and like suppress it and try to help it.
That doesn't my gravy.
Yeah, but if there was like spilled gravy that had been there for like a few days, I like recoil. Or like if there's like shit on the ground or something like that, I'll lose my mind. But like blood guts doesn't mind for me. But it's like the little things of like her bits and details of like all that dried food on her, like that stuff to me, and like the cookie breath.
Oh yeah,
it's that the specificity of that stuff is so gross to me, and just the idea of being in that environment made me mingled with the claustrophobia. Just like got me like. Ugh.
Did you guys like his meals? Like you feed him soup and
I would
a single egg and
toast tips.
Toast tips.
The toast tips I would enjoy. The soups no, because you can't tell what's in the soup sometimes. So. I would be.
Oh, what about the bucket?
Oh, that's the number. I
wrote that down.
Yeah, on page 33, when she leaned over him like a monolith, the bucket slightly tipped. He could see the rag twisting slowly in its dark depths like a drowned thing. He could see a thin scrum of soap on top. Part of him groaned, but none of him hesitated. He drank quickly, washing the pills down, and the taste in his mouth was as it has been on the occasions when his mother made him brush his teeth with soap. Like, just the idea of seeing the rag there and just wondering like how much shit has been on the ground, and it's killed me. That stuff was a hypochondriac that fucking destroyed me.
My cemetery section is like page 24, legs. Page 50, legs. Page 102, bone jelly.
Like, yeah, I remember that. The way that they're described, the way he always describes them as just being like unnatural and crooked is so.
Or the salt dome of his knee.
Yeah.
This is like. If you've listened to our Danse Macabre episode, you know that this is one of my greatest fears is bodies being fucked up in a way where you can't move to fix them. You're also under the care of someone who wants to modify your body and doesn't really know what she's doing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So from page 11, it says that he's scared because he realizes she doesn't know what she's doing as much as she thinks she does.
Yes.
She was a nurse, but that's only going to take her so far.
Right.
And his legs are a fucking mess, and he can't even look at them. This book made me so uncomfortable in a physical way with all of the leg stuff and the amputation stuff. Like, I can't even choose a passage. And I will also say, this book did that thing that King does so often where you know you're in like 3/4 of the way through, you're in the middle, and it seems like he's gonna get out, or and you know, because you are holding the rest of the book, you're like, this is gonna get so bad so soon because the book is nowhere near over.
Exactly. And that, I also found the body horror stuff, I have the same exact fears and found the same things disturbing. And more so than the actual moments in which they happened, the echoes that they leave in Paul's mind, where he, like when she takes the needle out and he's in the basement and he thinks she's gonna, do something, modify something again. And you just know that for the rest of his life, he's going to be having those intrusive thoughts and those fears. And I thought that it was a very accurate, portrayal of sort of trauma and PTSD type thought, like that the way that those horrible moments come back to you, I thought just knowing that he would be plagued with that for the rest of his life is what I'm finding myself thinking about now that I've read the novel. It's just like those things flashing back, and you can never escape them. Yeah,
the debasement, and like when he feels guilt and he starts like crying because of the guilt he feels and stuff, like, I don't know, just like those moments, he's just so pathetic,
Well, speaking of pathetic, how about on page 51 of the Pocketbooks edition, when he says he had to urinate. He laid the top sheet over his penis, hoping to create a crude filter, and urinated through it into his cupped and shaking hands. He tried to think of it as recycling, and drank what he had managed to hold, and then licked his wet palms. Here was something else he reckoned he would not tell people about if he lived long enough to tell them anything. So he's like drinking his own urine, which is like, God.
This is a weird opinion, but I was really surprised that we didn't dwell on the bedpan usage at any point. It was kind of like, he used the bedpan.
Yeah.
That's like a terrible, humiliating thing that people go through. And I was like, how are we not dwelling on this if we're dwelling on some other stuff? Like,
yeah, like she didn't make him, like, I don't know, scrub his own bedpan or anything.
Even just like what the, I've never used a bedpan, and it must be kind of god awful. Like you'd want to use a toilet.
Yeah, you don't want to poop in bed. No one wants to poop in bed.
I also think that the mind is a powerful thing, and if you left to its own devices, like, I think that that's one of the scariest things, as we've already discussed in here, and the little things that she just kind of drops that King welds in there to like build her character up and her own mystery would send me over the edge. Like if I was Paul, just like laying there being like, what did she mean on the stand? I can't really ask her about that. What does that mean? Was it a stand for a parking ticket? Was it a stand for this? Like, no, it's probably for serial killing. I would just go through such a psychosis with those small little details that she kept dropping, and knowing that I can't move and I'm at her will and whim. Like that to me added so much terror into this story. Just trying to figure that out, or just trying to put myself in that position, because as a reader, it's interesting because we want to, like, obviously figure it out ourselves, but trying to, pair that with an actual survival mentality is, oh God, that would.
When he's holding the book and he's like, this book is so big.
Yeah.
And he hasn't like read and like all of it yet.
That's exactly what you just said. It's like, what's coming next in the rest
within the book within the book.
I do like that King personifies the typewriter.
Yeah.
Classic King, just making it look like some like monster.
Well, and it gets really unnerving, like once all the letters start dropping out of the words. Like there was the way it looked on the page was very unnerving to me, and I like that a lot.
To her, there's actually not a lot of readerly suspense when she hurts him, which is very scary to me.
Yeah.
0.0 capacity for reasoning or bargaining with her.
Yeah.
You just know that when she's made up her mind to hurt him, she's going to do it swiftly and like brutally. Yeah. And so when it becomes time for that again, I found it very difficult to read.
Yeah. I've had this idea of like this punishment where like you wake up in a cell and there's a countdown clock. And it resets at 24 hours, but when it as it counts down, like you'll be taken to another room and just punished, and there's no arguing with it, and then they throw you back in the room, and the countdown clock starts again. These are the things I think about. But it had a bit of that, like it's coming, and not a thing you can do will change it.
Right. That's fascinating. I guess another part that freaked me out, like if we're talking, I was mentioning earlier, I was kind of criticizing some of the more sensational moments of horror, but there was one that really worked for me only because it was presented in such a nightmarish haze. And
Can I guess?
Yeah.
It's when he thinks the dead cop is coming for him.
No, but I did like that.
I like that. Yeah.
I have when she puts his thumb on the birthday cake.
Was that real?
Well, that's the thing.
I can't tell.
You don't
couldn't tell
know.
either.
And that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
So I'll just read a little bit of this section because I thought it was really well done. So she had cut his thumb off in the morning, and that night she swept gaily into the room where he sat in a stupid daze of drugs and pain, with his wrapped left hand held against his chest, and she had a cake, and she was bellowing "Happy birthday to you" in her on-key but tuneless voice, although it was not his birthday, and there were candles all over the cake, and sitting in the exact center, pushed into the frosting like an extra big candle, had been his thumb, his gray dead thumb, the nail slightly ragged because sometimes he chewed it when he was stuck for a word. And she told him, "If you promise to be good, Paul, you can have a piece of birthday cake, but you won't have to eat any of the special candle." So he promised to be good because he didn't want to be forced to eat any of the special candle. And then it keeps going, and then it like devolves into like this stream of consciousness kind of thing. So yeah, I think it is like a nightmare that he's having, but it's presented in such a way where it exists in this place between reality and
the nail
dream.
is right in the pocket for me again.
Yeah.
And when he sees the scar on his severed foot, like
Yeah.
that's right in the like forced surgery zone that I cannot deal with.
Right.
Well, and it's part of that torture porn era where you just see that, it's like in like the Texas Chainsaw remake when you see the guy had like the wedding ring for his girlfriend and all these like what could have beens, or like in the past, like when you have these moments like, I hate the movie 31, but there's a scene where one of the guys, one of the idiot characters in that movie is talking about how they're hearing a song in this like horrific situation. He's like, man, the last time I heard this song, I was like, somewhere on the beach or something like that. And I always think that that's where my mind would drift off if I was sitting there in these situations. I would just be thinking about, man, when was the last time I was doing this? Like, oh, wow. Well, I guess 2 months ago, I was actually just sitting here in, a Los Angeles hotel enjoying my life. And to see like something that's actually being taken away that you have memories of, that's like in someone's hand, like that would just terrify
and
me.
That's why this is scary. Like losing that left foot and losing the thumb and contemplating that is so much more scary than like watching Hostel and watching them cut off an arm from a character that you don't know much about or like whatever.
Right.
Because you see that personal tie and you realize that whatever that thing they're thinking about and talking about is gone forever now. And like there was life to that. And I don't know. Yeah. So that speaking of appendages being removed, I know we've been kind of slamming the Misery book a little bit, but the actual Misery's Return. But I thought there was like a section in here that was really well written and kind of creepy. There's actually a few sections I thought were pretty well written, but like there was one that was like really eerie that dealt with the fingers in the coffin. On page 175, 4 days following the interment, an elderly woman named Mrs. Soames, Mrs. Ramage knew her slightly, had observed something white lying on the ground of the Congressional Church's cemetery as she entered it to put flowers on the grave of her husband, who had died the previous winter. It was much too big to be a flower petal, and she thought it might be a dead bird of some sort. As she approached, she became more and more sure that the white object was not just lying on the ground, but protruding from it. She came 2 or 3 hesitant steps closer yet and observed a hand reaching from beyond the earth of a fresh grave, the fingers frozen in a hideous gesture of supplication. Blood-streaked bones protruded from the ends of all the digits save for the thumb. And just like, then when obviously your mind is just going to think of, I mean, I always think of Kill Bill with the thing like that, but just like the idea of like feeling the splinters just keep going in there, like,
so before the hobbling, which was also in my cemetery, I think the most scared I got during this book were there are 2 little blips. One was when she says, do you want the good news or the bad news? And she says the bad news is like, I've known that you've been out.
Yeah.
And you're like,
what's going to happen?
And then the second part was when he's like, what the fuck does pre-op shot mean?
Yeah. Yeah, those are great moments. That
Totally great.
that realization when you realize with Paul that she knew is so, it feels like it's that feeling of like knowing you're gonna get punished.
Yeah.
Like I was feeling that, like, 'cause, when your parents catch you doing something and it's like, and obviously the stakes are much higher in this book, but it's like I had that same sort of sense of dread and like doom.
This more than any other King book maybe I've read made me put it, like close it and put it on my lap and just like sigh and then pick it back up again. Like
Totally.
Because it's so real. That's the thing. Like, you know, when you can put it away when you know how like farcical or, you know, sensational it is, where this is so gritty and real in that moment. And it's also inescapable in ways that a lot of the horror that he's had, even with his most grisliest book, or the grisliest book he's done, Pet Sematary, there's a lot of escapable notions in that. Just leave the fucking town. But in this, like, you can't go anywhere, and you're forcibly put through the ringer, literally through these things that are just awful. I mean, like, she even says, like, oh no, killing would be too easy. You know, I'm gonna torture you in other ways. Like, he wants to die, other than just even having to. Not even just with the idea of getting more body horror, but just the possibility of having any more psychological horror too. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like, when you're at that level of in humanity, like, that's terrifying. It's
a really good setup with the inescapable thing and the mud thing you were talking about earlier. I feel like the temptation for King is always to be like, well, he can't escape because A, B, C, D, and I will list all the particulars. Yeah. But in this one, it's just so convincing, even from the outset. You know she's isolated. You know his legs are awful. Yeah. And it's just like there is no getting out. Like,
yeah. And I was like power reading this book to finish it for today, and I felt like I wanted to put it down and walk away, and I was like, I can't. I'm exactly like Paul Sheldon.
Any other cemetery jaunts we want to take?
I'm pretty good with the cemetery as it is.
Well, the sky is parting, and floating down from the heavens is a thing we like to call the word processor of the gods.
And we're going to make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, what the fuck you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
This is the section where we talk about our favorite passages, our favorite bits of writing, the moments when Stephen King elevates beyond Paul Sheldon and writes something that is truly beautiful. I actually loved right in the beginning. I thought the pilings metaphor was really powerful, and it really worked for me, because I think that whenever I think about, I can't remember where I read this, but the idea of exposed bone is always really unnerving and painful for me to read or think about. And I guess the pilings metaphor is sort of the way the water came in and out, and these bits of wood. It always reminded me of exposed bone, and so for me it's like a very dry pain, and that's something that is horrifying to me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was one that stood out to me right at the beginning.
I only had 3, and one was the pilings.
Yeah.
The other one is on page 352 of my edition, just the line, "In the dark he thought with his skin."
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
That's a great line.
Like, just saying like how you feel when you're scared in the dark. Mm-hmm. And then my third one was on page 34, which gets at, again, the debasement that we were talking about. He didn't want to think about it because just living it was hard enough. He didn't want to think about it because whenever he did, unpleasant images intervened. The way she went blank, the way she made him think of idols and stones, and now the way the yellow plastic floor bucket had sped toward his face like a crashing moon. Thinking of those things would not change his situation was in fact worse than not thinking at all. But once he turned his mind to Annie Wilkes and his position here in her house, they were the thoughts that came, crowding out all others. His heart would start to beat too fast, mostly in fear, but partly in shame too. He saw himself putting his lips to the rim of the yellow floor bucket, saw the rinse water with its film of soap and the rag floating in it, saw these things but drank anyway, never hesitating a bit. He would never tell anyone about that, assuming he ever got out of this, and he supposed he might try to lie about it to himself, but he would never be able to do it.
Who else has something?
I have one. And a lot of my favorite stuff of this book, again, just goes into all the sort of writer notions. They're the insights of a writer. And I loved on page 293 when he writes, "Why couldn't it have happened to him? Because writers remember everything, Paul, especially the hurts. Strip a writer to the buff, point to the scars, and he'll tell you the story of each small one. From the big ones, you get novels, not amnesia. A little talent is a nice thing to have if you want to be a writer, but the only real requirement is that ability to remember the story of every scar. Art consists of the persistence of memory."
I wrote
that's something like,
I
literally
have that open right now.
Like I love that. And then we're back in misery because I thought that some of the passages now were pretty good. So I'm going on page 173. Here was the church. She turned Mary up the lane which ran beside it, shivering at the ghostly sound of the wind playing along the eaves. She had a moment to wonder why such a holy place as a church should seem so frightening after dark, and then realized it was not the church, it was the errand. The king. Listen to every one of these sections in the past, 2 years that we've been doing this. And I always will point out like the more natural surroundings that King can paint. Yes. I just love them. Like that. Those are some of my favorite sections from him for sure. And I thought he really leaned heavily on that with like their ride into the cemetery, because I definitely felt as if I was there, even though this is just a bullshit book in the movie.
Yeah, he had those breaks to almost observe the landscape around the cabin, and those were like these moments of beauty, in the midst of this. I had one throwaway line that similar. I think I really liked it. Instilled kind of a normally happy thing with a sort of fecund grossness. It's Annie is bringing him ice cream sundaes, and Annie had come in with 2 giant dishes of vanilla ice cream, a can of Hershey's chocolate syrup, a pressure can of Ready Whip, and a jar in which maraschino cherries, red as heart's blood, floated like biology specimens.
Love that.
I just loved that line, and I'm like, yep, never going to look at maraschino cherries any other way. Great.
I had one little line that I thought was great. It's early on. He says he thought of pushing his hand through that smile and encountering nothing but flexible darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought that was a really cool image.
This book is not like purple at all.
No.
Like, it's intentionally very blunt and like not stylized, and I like that about it. But it does mean that like my word processor section is very sparse.
Right. I have another one. I just thought this was a neat little section. It conjures a great image. That's very Kingian to me. But he says he felt nothing at all. He supposed a man who had just cut his hand off in a power saw might feel this same species of nothing as he stood regarding his spouting wrist with dull surprise. I just love that image.
I really liked on page 13. Oh, lucky 13. She relaxed, smiled, the crevice closed. Summer flowers nodded cheerfully once again. And this is the line. He thought of pushing his hand through that smile and encountering nothing but flexible darkness. Did you really just say that? Oh my God.
I literally just
He was trying to find it while you were saying it.
That's the thing. Because I'm scanning. The thing is, like, I put my notes in here and I just mark things like like WP, and I could not find a WP for the life of me. So I was like really in deep thought. And mostly I never listened to you on this podcast.
Well, the Rat Man
Randall.
forgive you this time.
Yeah.
Any other word processors that we want to share?
I have one.
Bring it.
Okay, one last one from me. Page 215. He's super high, Paul is. Now the light in the room did not look dull. It looked marvelously pure, marvelously full of its own gray and eldritch charm. He could imagine cranes half glimpsed in gunmetal mist, standing in one-legged silence beside upland lakes in that light. Could imagine the mica flecks and rocks jutting from spring grasses and upland meadows, shining with the shaggy glow of glazed window glass in that light. Could imagine elves shucking their busy selves off to work in lines under the dew-soaked leaves of early ivy in that light. Oh boy, are you stoned, Paul thought and giggled faintly. I like everything except for the elves bit. I'm like, okay, but up until that, I was like, oh, this is really rhythmic and nice, and yeah.
Yeah, it is really rhythmic.
I got one more.
Yeah.
He thought of pushing his hand through that smile and encountering I actually got
the light section.
Yeah, that would have been great. No, I do have one more, and it ties back into a passage. One of my favorite passages in any Stephen King's writing is in The Shining, when he details how slowly the hotel just becomes more and more isolated, and they're just standing there and they're watching everyone leave. And I've referred to this section millions of times in this podcast, but this one reminds me of that's the way that he's able to show that sort of distance and that sense of place. And it's on page 13. I'm just joking. I'm not going to that one again, but no, it's on page 351. Annie laughed. She climbed the stairs, laughing harder and harder. There was a click as the lights went out, and Annie went on laughing. And he told himself he wouldn't scream, wouldn't beg, that he was past all that. But the damp wildness of the shadows and the boom of her laughter was too much, and he shrieked for her not to do this to him, not to leave him. But she went on laughing, and there was a click as the door was shut, and her laughter was muted, but the laughter was still there. Her laughter was on the other side of the door where there was light, and then the lock clicked, And then another door closed, and her laughter was even more muted, but still there. And another lock clicked, and a bolt slammed, and her laughter was going away. Her laughter was outside, and even after she had started the cruiser up, backed out, put the chain across the driveway, and driven away, he thought he could still hear her. He thought he could still hear her laughing and laughing and laughing. And that use of repetition, ooh, I love it. That's when the repetition goes great for it. So.
Well, it makes the locks feel real too.
Yeah. Because then you really get a sense of like, he's fucked. And and just like you start wondering, like, is he actually even hearing any of this stuff at this point?
It's the same thing of like yearning for something that has been lost when she shuts the door and he's like, yes, the light is behind that door and I will not have access to the light.
Yeah, it's just such a good setup to like what is going to actually happen after that. It's like almost just the terror is being built so well there. So
well, I don't know about you, Mike, but that section made me hungry. I think it's time for a serving of pound cake.
After all you've been taught, everyone isn't bad, Mama. Everything isn't a sin.
Come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven.
He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
Come on over to the table, everybody. It's time to carve yourself a nice hefty slice of pound cake.
Oh, it looks like you were in the kitchen.
I was
leave your room.
Yes, and it is here in this kitchen where we discuss some of King's maybe bluer moments, some of the sillier moments where our favorite author kind of stumbles when he talks about, let's just say, usually sex, but other things too.
Poop.
And poop. Oh yeah, there's a lot of poop. There's pee in this one, though. A lot of piss in this one. And but I think that my first one just made me laugh was because this is King and he can't not talk about a woman's breasts when she enters a room. Just the way he described Annie as having a large but unwelcoming swell of bosom. I just found that pairing very funny.
If I can follow that train of thought, the same paragraph.
Yeah.
When he talks about there's no defined roundness of hip or buttock or even calf below the endless succession of wool skirts. Her body was big but not generous. There was a feeling about her of clots and roadblocks rather than welcoming orifices or even open spaces, areas of hiatus, which just implies that, like, a woman's body should always be generous and open.
I like to leave my door open for strangers.
And then I really like the one on 52 and 53. From some final stronghold of sanity and evaluative clarity, the rational Paul Sheldon had thought, and with that intro, you think he's going to think something, like, kind of cool. She looks like a widow who just got fucked after a 10-year dry spell.
I forgot that line. It's like, God damn it. Like, you...
I remember there was a moment like that in Pet Sematary too, where he had like a really like beautiful lead in, and then it was just like, and then he whipped out his boner or something. You know, it's like,
hey, you've got two fans of the sex in Pet Sematary.
I love the sex in Pet Sematary.
That's true. I remember that. There was that section where he talks about how much he hated misery, and so he wrote. He he sent like a little short book about misery banging a dog like to everybody.
Misery's hobby.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, I can see how that's funny, but I don't know. Like if somebody sent me a book about a woman fucking a dog, like I would just think it was kind of creepy.
Yeah,
like,
I'd be like, thank you.
Yeah, it was like to closest friends and relatives.
I know, it was just very strange. Like that's not something I would necessarily find funny. I would just be like, that's really weird that you would write that. But yeah, how about you, Laura?
Let's see. I wrote misery bestiality fanfic in my notes, so covered that. Page 250, I wrote edgelord underneath this. He's talking about the gotta, which is like you gotta know what happens next, and chasing that, which we've discussed already. But toward the bottom of page 250 in my blue book. The gotta, nasty as a hand job in a sleazy bar, fine as a fuck from the world's most talented call girl. Oh boy, it was bad, and oh boy, it was good, and oh boy, in the end, it didn't matter how rude it was or how crude it was, because in the end, it was just like the Jacksons said on that record. Don't stop till you get enough.
Oh, yeah.
Don't stop till you get... I don't know. I just was like, I was like, come on, like, I just can't do this. Like, that was one of the... I had to put the book down.
You feel like that is at Steve at his most, like, yeah.
Right,
like, he loves that shit.
Oh, yeah.
He always does that sort of thing, like almost like the next time you're driving sort of like call to action sort of dialogue there. And I think like on page 339 when he talks, I already mentioned the man gland thing, but even like how he ends that, and it's like, don't you use that F word around me, Annie said. I was raised better even if you weren't. You're lucky I didn't cut off your man gland. I thought of it, He looked at her. His stomach felt like the inside of an ice maker. I know you did, Annie, he said softly. Her eyes widened, and for just a moment she looked both startled and guilty. Naughty Annie instead of nasty Annie. Like, this is so
Missy
lame.
Annie, if you're nasty again.
Yeah,
Man.
And then he refers to her as a pig,
Yeah.
which is the wink wink sort of thing. So
I just remember when he was talking about misery, he just kept going, that bitch. Okay, what does the bitch
the
do
bitch.
now?
Yeah, she ever
Move the
graved
bitch
that
here.
bitch. Yeah, like,
she sounds like Chucky.
I killed that bitch.
Yeah, I know. It was just
it's prime time. Bitch.
They're it's not pound cake and it's not exactly misery, but the whole like cockadooey and sort of like like country
Dirty
accent
bird.
like got just so it got very cloying after a while.
Sure.
It was I guess like
Maybe
I get
overdid
it.
it a bit.
I get it. You think she's a cute country
She's
folk.
folksy.
Like, she's folksy.
I did like when she would drop it and suddenly just say like fuck or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that was always like, oh no, shit's getting real.
Yeah, I also had to suck my book at the end because that's
Yep.
so awful. King is so bad about like when the hero finally like gets one on the villain, he always makes him say something really stupid, like some kind of like one-liner. The worst is in Desperation. Like I mean, obviously we're not there yet, so I won't spoil. But great book, or at least I really like it. But the moment at the end with the hero is like it's a line that just ruins the entire like edge or like the tension of it all. But yeah, and it drives me crazy. Any other bits of pound cake here? Any crumbs?
Yes. 337. We just get, I think this is a pretty classic bit of King pound cake. He could smell what?
I'll get to that.
Yeah, okay. He could smell the sweat of her recent exertions, and while he actually liked the smell of fresh perspiration, he associated it with work, hard effort, things he respected. This smell was secretive and nasty, like old sheets thick with dried cum.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Things he respected.
Thick with it.
Yeah, Jesus, how much were you coming on those sheets?
Yeah.
Well, he's really into cummy sheets. There's a story I think in Nightmares and Dreamscapes about a woman, or was it in Skeleton Crew? I can't remember. There's like it's about a housekeeper and who becomes obsessed with like with the sheets of a guy's room sheets.
It's
cleaning.
racist and bad and
yeah,
gross.
it's so bad, and it's like she's like licking the cum off the sheets. It's so gross.
No.
Sorry about that. Any other bits of pound cake here?
I've got a crumb. It's very much a crumb on page 252 of
Bring
my
it.
blue book. There's several things, one of which is the masturbation line, but the line that bothered me most on this page is an aside. He's saying something and he says he knew this by now, just as sexually acute men know which dates will put out at the end of the evening and which ones will not. Just the phrase sexually acute men.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Also, you never know.
Yeah.
So shut the fuck up.
Sexually acute. Awesome. Well, I got to tell you guys, my belly is full. It's just overflowing. So
Yum, yum, yum.
I think it's time to walk off some of those pounds in a place we like to call King's Dominion.
There's another world out there.
I know there is.
Welcome to King's Dominion, a magical land where us nerds do everything we kind of made fun of earlier by dissecting and deconstructing certain Easter eggs within this book. So I think the obvious one, where does this book take place?
A Sidewinder.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And why do we know?
We're doing Rampage.
Sidewinder, Colorado, which is where old Halloran has to go to get up to the Overlook.
Yeah.
So they mention the Overlook in this book.
In what book is the Overlook in?
The Shining.
Oh, okay. The Shining.
The Humbling.
So we do know that this takes place in the same universe as Jack Torrance. 'Cause
Yeah.
literally only 10 years
Well, the
apart.
hitchhiker says that he was, or does she say it?
Yeah, she says he's
Yeah.
crazy. And
That the hitchhiker was like wanting to write a book about the Overlook and what had happened there. So it's a really direct reference to The Shining, which is pretty neat. And then I also have a few crazy ones, but Mike, I think you and I both both talked about this, but like the idea that Paul calls his readers constant readers, just like King does, I found to be an interesting.
He references where it's from, though, isn't it? From something.
Oh yeah.
Victorian,
I think he does.
Victorian literature. It was like a Victorian archetype in, I don't know, whatever little half penny books. I think that's what they called them formally.
Yeah, I just think that it's always going to be associated with King for me, especially the capital C, capital R, So.
Well, I know one capital K, which is Mrs. Casbrack.
Yeah, I wrote that
who's
down.
also on page 119.
Ah.
Yeah, I feel like that was really intentional. But so he says it was a summer vacation. His father was working, his mother gone to spend the day in Boston with Mrs. Casbrack from across the street.
Yeah.
Do we know if they ever lived in Boston?
The Casbrack
Casbracks?
family?
Yeah.
No, because when
I don't
Eddie
remember.
flies back, he goes to New York, if I recall.
Yeah, but I wonder where his family moved. Did he leave Derry in it? Like after the events of when they were kids? Because I know some of them moved.
He leaves Derry.
Of his
Eddie.
own- well, yeah, but did his family move? Like, did they move to Boston? And that's who he's
don't know.
hanging out with? It's interesting. But yeah, I caught that too. So I'm like, hey, like Eddie's aunt or something. So
Or Myra the Hog.
Myra the Hog. Ugh, hate that character.
On page 21.
Yeah.
This is a little ridiculous, but he says also the goddamn tunnel made him nervous, and it was like there's like that, the tunnel from The Stand.
Yeah.
And he also references the Lincoln Tunnel at one point later on in the book. So there's just that seems as if it's a little too much, I think, putting there.
Here's some I got.
Okay.
There's a woman named Soames.
At Doc
In The
Soames.
Stand, Doc Soames. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
I got a really crazy one too. Like, so on page 178, she had seen children in similar postures by the railway line, listening for the trains. Stand By Me, the body.
Wow. It's actually Blaine, so.
Yeah.
In the Misery book, just the fact that they were digging up her grave, Pet Cemetery. Hello.
On page
that
61, chapter 19.
Do you actually have one?
That was
Okay.
mine.
On page 159 in Misery's Return, why didn't Duncan Fromsley see Old Man Patterson not 2 days after his funeral, glowing just as white as marsh fire, which was just what it probably was, Joffrey thought, marsh fire, plus whatever came out of old Fromsley's last bottle. What other book do we see marsh fire in, or at least mentioned in?
Pet Cemetery.
Pet Cemetery.
Well, also Beverly Marsh, My Fire.
Hello!
Jerry Embers, My Fire. March there.
That's a room 237.
Yeah.
I would say this is a small one, but at the end, his editor's name is Charlie Merrill. In real life, his editor is Chuck Verrill.
Ace Merrill?
Ace Merrill.
Hello.
Also.
Maybe he has a brother who became an editor?
Okay,
Duh.
this is a real one. 259. Unless his assessment of Annie Wilkes was totally off the beam.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I wrote that.
And there is a reference to, they're mention of gunslingers in Hollywood, too.
Yeah,
so.
he mentions the word gunslinger a few times in the book, which was interesting.
Misery Chastain, Jessica Chastain is going to be playing Beverly. Hello.
Oh,
Hello.
Yeah, it was prescient.
There's also a prescient one here in the book Dark Half. The barrel pencils play a huge role. They're not black warriors. Like he mentions black warriors here. They're black beauties in Dark Half, but they play a very big role in the story. So he clearly was in pencil mode when he wrote this. So do you ever get in pencil mode
Yeah,
as a writer?
Cocaine mode, and then you go right over to pencil mode.
I don't write longhand.
Mike, it looks like you have more.
It is interesting that, so like I usually consult sometimes the complete Stephen King universe, A Guide to the Worlds of Stephen King by Stanley Whiter, Christopher Golden, and Hank Wagner, which I had mentioned earlier before.
From Breaking Bad.
Yeah, exactly. In the Misery trivia, they mentioned the Casbrack trivia, but they don't mention the most obvious King's Dominion here, which is The Shining.
Really?
That's
Which
a
is
gross
that's
oversight.
strange.
Right? Yeah.
I'd
So
say an overlook.
ooh, I like that.
Hello!
Ladies.
Any other King Dominions here?
I couldn't find any other ones.
Yeah, I feel like that's more than we get for some though.
Yeah, that is.
I feel like we're entering though kind of the maybe not the golden years, but we're entering somewhat into the golden years of King's Dominion, because like in a lot of the earlier books, it was all room 237 because he hadn't really started merging his worlds yet. But
Sometimes
now
you'd get like a really cool one that was like a call forward.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of singing Rose shit
Right.
in his early books.
right. But yeah, I think with Talisman was when it really started. Like post Talisman is when he really started kind of merging the worlds, which I think is really fun. So yeah, I think it's time to move to our final thoughts and nose ratings.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
Welcome to our final thoughts. This is the section
You're so welcoming
where we
on this
offer...
episode.
I'm feeling very polite today. Maybe because I don't want to piss off Annie Wilkes. So yeah, I think let's all go around and say how we feel. I'll start. I think.
Oh boy.
There's no gap in between anyone.
None. Okay, Mr. Smartsy Pants.
I really like this book. I think that there's a lot to love about it. I feel like it's a really cool turning point for King. I feel like this was like post it, we're entering into a new phase of King, which is cool because hey, it's a new year. Am I right? And so I feel like we're entering into a new phase. He's exploring newer themes. He's exploring smaller situations. I mean, obviously post it, he probably wanted to scale things back a bit. Although, having said that, we are about to move on to Tommyknockers. But after that, things start to scale back again. I know Tommyknockers is going to be fun, but I think that we're seeing a more meta King. We're seeing a King who is kind of unable to divorce himself personally and his level of success and where he's at in his career from the work he's making. So I think that there's going to be I think the way the history impacts each book this year is really going to influence the way we're going to read it and look at it. So I think Misery's cool in that it really starts that sort of trend. And it's also, I think, a very iconic story and just one that obviously has persevered, and it has one of his most memorable villains, I think. And, I feel like people... When somebody just posted on our Facebook page, they took like The Sims. They went to The Sims and they made Sims of all the villains in Stephen King world. Not all of them, but a selection of them. And like the very first one was Annie. So I feel like it's a villain that a lot of people associate with King, and she is a really wonderful creation. I think rereading this, I was very struck by it, and it, I like that it's trim. King said that this is a book where he actually took notes and advice from people. He said he did not do that with Tommyknockers, which is why it's like 800 pages. Yeah. But he said that the reason this book is like 300, well, I think the initial printing was 320 pages or something. Now they read longer, but he, he goes, I was very, he's like, I took a lot of notes on this one. I was very receptive to feedback on this one. And you can see that because it moves along really well. And I find a lot of the philosophical musings in the writing kind of patter to be, really intriguing, really fascinating. So I am going to give this book 4 bright red Pennywise clown noses out of 5. So, Mike, do you want to go next?
Sure. Like I said, I think this is a very metaphorical book. Mm-hmm. And for that alone, this is intriguing to me. My favorite part of doing this podcast is always trying to align where Stephen King's head was at, where, Basement Jacks, when he goes into each and every book. And this one was a delight for me. I feel like I really got to kind of chew into just who King is as a person. And it felt like a prelude to everything that was going to happen in the 90s. It felt like a preamble to his own writing. So all of the sort of technical aspects of what this says about King alone makes this a highlight for me, a major highlight. I really love the interplay between Annie and Paul. This is absolutely a page turner in every way and shape or form, and I never was really bored, even during the parts that I had to really kind of say that sagged for me. Was never really sagging. There wasn't really any point where I honestly was like, oh God, I gotta go back to this. No, I actually was really intrigued, and so much so that I was like finding myself reading it in like really like weird, bizarre times. Like last night when we left the restaurant, it was like pitch black outside. I still was just like sitting there with my phone, just like as I was walking home, like trying to read sections of it because I just wanted to know what happened. Also needed to get it done before the podcast, but I do think that sort of that intensity and that addiction really goes into exactly what he's saying here, with even just like the little chapters that Annie wants, and all the little movie chapters that she talks about in her own past. And for that, I just think it's a very smart book. I think it's really, I think he nails exactly what he set out to do. And I think it's, like you said, it's a really good transitional book for King as a writer. So for that, I'm going to give it 4.5. Actually, I think this is a really strong, solid book, and I would actually put this really high up in his
nice. Mel,
you know French.
Follow that.
I definitely echo the thoughts about the intensity. One thing I didn't tell you guys is that I read this book in 2 days.
Nice.
I finished it yesterday on the bus over here. And it did not sag at all. It was breakneck pace throughout. I had read this really great interview with Stephen King that I think we linked to on our Facebook, although I didn't read the whole thing because you need a subscription to the Paris Review. Yeah. But he characterizes his novels as being either innies or outies, like belly buttons. And this one is definitely an innie. It's a limited cast. It's introspective. It's about interiors, both in terms of the room and the people. And I love it when he does that. It's what I love about Cujo. It's what I love about The Shining. It's what I especially love about Gerald's Game. And again, I think this book is a first attempt at what Gerald's Game will ultimately be more successful at.
Nice.
Both in terms of its politics and in terms of what goes on in the book. Both deal with people strapped to a bed who have to figure out a means to escape from an impossible situation. And I think when he wrote Gerald's Game, he was just a little bit more conscientious. It, to me, is more scary in a cerebral way, whereas this one really fucked with me on a physical level. And I kudos for that. But a rating of 4 or 4.5 to me is like near perfect, right? And I think I'm going to have to go 3.5 out of 5 bright red Pennywise clown noses just because I was so distracted by some of the poor sensitivity choices. And because the thoughts on writing were personally grating to me at times, which will happen with Stephen King and me going forward. Although that's not to say I take a lot of inspiration from him as an authorial figure. So this was really an experience, especially in 2 days. 3.5 out of 5 bright red Pennywise clown noses.
Nice. Laura?
Well, I'm going to mirror a lot of what Mel just said. I also read it in 2 days, which, as I said before, was an intense experience because I found it incredibly claustrophobic and disturbing. And I couldn't put it down because I had to finish it. So for those same reasons, I did enjoy it. I ended up liking the meta nature of it as a reflection on writing, and there was just something about it, like I said, on a rhythmic level, on a pulsing level that gross, I'm sorry, that I found compelling. And whether or not I liked Paul Sheldon, I just liked the experience of it. And my main thought was that I was really sad that we didn't get to see Paul take Misery the pig home as a pet.
Yeah.
To set up the sequel, Misery 2 Pig in the City. That was my main beef, as it were, with this book. But, I'm not going to repeat what y'all said. I think you captured it eloquently. For many of the same reasons as Mel did, I'm giving it 3.5 out of 5, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Bright red, shiny, bright red Pennywise clown noses. Did I get all of those adjectives in the correct
You might have
order?
even added one.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Did I add one?
Well, Dan used to always add one too.
Was it plump?
Yes.
We should add like turgid.
Yeah.
What would Dan always add? Dan always had some funny
White wed.
He
always adds the affectation to it.
White wed.
Anyways, so that averages out to probably what, like a
I think I'm going to go
3.8?
I think we'll keep this boys girls with in terms of ratings. I'm going to go 4.0 now.
Ooh.
Really? You're downgrading?
I'm going to downgrade.
Maybe you should stand by your
rating.
rating.
Here's the thing. I gave The Dead Zone 5.
Right.
And that is my favorite book of his. I gave Pet Sematary 5. 4.5. I did criticize a lot on this episode. 4.5 makes no sense.
You're a generous
4 makes sense.
All right, that means 3.75 is the average if you both gave 4 and we both gave 3.5.
Boom.
That seems right.
Speaking of noses, stay tuned for our next Needful Tweets episode because I will be giving my preemptive 5 nose review of Aquaman, which I know you've all been waiting for probably like 8 or 9 months now. I know you guys are very excited to hear my 5 nose review of Aquaman. Even I have yet to see it, but I did promise I would give it 5 noses.
And you're going to go see it.
I'm going to go see it. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely going to see it. I love Jason Momoa.
Yeah, right.
But before we get to that, we're going to be back next week with an episode devoted to the film Misery, Rob Reiner's film starring Jimmy Caan.
Jimmy Caan.
Yeah, do a Jimmy Caan impression.
We're going to be back next week. We can go to the theater. Get some popcorn. I'm not really a big
like Robert De Niro.
I'm not really a big popcorn guy. What can I say? Just give me a soda.
and Kathy Bates, obviously.
Love Kathy
Very
Bates.
excited. We're also going to talk about the theatrical adaptations of this work because I think that's sort of a unique aspect because there's been a lot of theatrical adaptations of King, but this is one of the more successful ones. Like my buddy,
set in a single room.
Yeah, one room. Yeah, one room.
my buddy works at a theater in Cincinnati that just produced it like a couple months ago. I was actually trying to get out there for it, but
We
alas.
should try to get him on the pod.
He doesn't like Stephen King.
All right, well, never mind.
So, so yeah, we'll be back next week for that. But you guys are probably going to want to start reading the Tommyknockers now because let's just say it's a long one, and it's even Stephen King says it's not good. But I stand by the fact that when I was a child, I adored that book, and I'm excited to reread it.
Well, we're going to be knocking some toms in February.
So gear up for that. And anything else you guys want to add? Laura, where can people find you, your work, or anything of that nature?
I'm really bad at social media and that I like to hide behind pseudonyms for fear. But you can find me at Underalls on Twitter, like the things you wear under your pants, at Underalls. Yeah, and that's where if I'm posting, I'm going to make my short film public soon. I'm going to post it there. No one will watch it. That's fine. I know this. You can do that there.
You're very funny on Twitter.
I was going to say, you're very funny on Instagram stories.
Oh, thank you. Oh, my Instagram stories. I've been thinking of I realized my Insta's a Finsta, and I'm going to make a Rinsta for my filmmaker persona. So maybe I'll make some of those public. No, nobody cares. I'll stop talking.
I think it's great.
I know what all
Thank
those
you.
phrases mean because
Are you still writing for Sad Horoscopes?
Yeah. There's an account called Soroscopes, and that has on Twitter, and some of those are mine. Were you doing those as well?
No, but I like the account.
Yeah, it's fun, and I've recently become a contributor for The Onion.
Yes,
so
Nice.
I've only had like 2 things published, and it's for their video team and soon to be podcasty kind of stuff. So I'm around. I'll stop talking.
No, you're
I
fine.
hate talking about myself.
Follow Laura on Twitter and Instagram, her Finsta and the Rinsta and the Ginsta. It's all good stuff. And then Mel, people can find you at
melcastle.com or at melcastle on Twitter, and Castle is spelled Kassel, so MELKASSEL.
Mike and I are both very bad at Twitter, but we're both on it.
Yeah,
Just
if you want to
kidding.
see self-deprecating tweets and fun gifs of random Funko Pops,
Sometimes we plan to watch movies at the same time.
Yeah, we do.
It's true. You can follow me at Randall Colburn. You can follow him at Michael Rothman. And you can follow us at the Losers Club. I can't remember. What's our Twitter handle?
Oh, Lord.
I think it's Losers Club Pod.
Yeah,
Losers
just
Club
Losers Club
Pod.
Pod.
We're also on Instagram. We're also on Facebook. Like I said, fresh content.
Fresh and vivid content.
Hello.
So vivid.
Yes, so vivid. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see you all next week. So long days.
Long days and
pleasant
nights.
Nice.
Good job, Laura.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you know you want somebody to treat you good.
Consequence Podcast Network.